Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Rhode Island House of Representatives Committee on Education. Today is Wednesday, March 24th, 2021. Will the clerk please take the roll?
Yes. Chair McNamara.
Here.
Vice Chair Barros. Vice Chair Amore.
Here.
Okay, on WebEx. Representative Alzate. Is Rep Alzate here? Okay.
No.
Rep Bia.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, sorry. Rep Caldwell.
Present.
Rep Donovan.
She's unmuted. She's on WebEx.
She is here. Yeah.
She's
Okay.
WebEx. Yeah,
Right.
she's here.
Rep Fenton Fung. Okay. Rep Geraldo is here.
Present.
Yes. Rep Kislak.
Present.
Rep Noré.
Here.
Rep Phillips.
Present.
Okay. Rep Wranglin Vassal. Rep Roberts.
Present.
Oh, she is. Okay, we know she's trying to get on. And Rep Shawcross Smith. Is Rep Shawcross Smith here? Okay.
No.
Chair, we have a quorum.
Thank you. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Today, before we start our hearing, I am going to make a motion to hold the bills on today's agenda for further study. House Bill 5703 has been postponed by request of the sponsor, and I believe that was postponed 48 hours in advance. I know, yeah. At this time, I am going to make a motion to hold House Bill 5073, 5352, House Bill 5826, 5827, 5828, 5829, 5830, 5831, 5833, 5834, 6021, 6117. I'm going to make a motion to hold those bills for further study. Is there a second? And that has been seconded by Representative Caldwell. We need a roll call vote. Mr. Clerk.
Yes. Chair McNamara.
Yes.
Vice Chair Barros. Vice Chair Amore.
Yes.
Rep Alzate. Rep Bia.
Yes.
Rep Caldwell.
Yes.
Rep Donovan.
Yes.
Rep Fenton Fung. Rep Geraldo.
Mr. Chairman, I have a question. I will have to recuse myself from 6117. Does that preclude me from voting to hold all the bills, as that bill is included in there?
Yeah, I would say out of abundance of
caution. Yeah.
You could probably
Can I
vote on an abundance of precaution. I would recommend you recuse yourself.
I'll just recuse myself from this.
From this vote. Correct.
I would like
Yep.
to recuse myself. Thank you.
And on that bill. Okay. So Rep Geraldo is recused. Rep Kislak.
Yes.
Okay. Rep Noré.
Yes.
Rep Phillips.
Yes.
Rep Wranglin Vassal. Rep Roberts.
Yes.
And Rep Shawcross Smith. Chair, the motion passes.
Okay. Thank you. The first two bills we're going to hear are 6021 and 6117. Representative Agelo is with us in person today, so we're going to honor her as one of our senior leaders in this chamber, and it's always a pleasure to have her here in person. And Rep. Agelo, what's your pleasure? Which bill would you like to do first?
Why don't we take them really together? 6021 deals with charter schools, both district and independent charter schools, and 6117 deals with mayoral academies.
I think out of an abundance of precaution, Representative Geraldo is going to recuse himself on these two bills. Let the record please reflect that.
Thank you, Mr.
Recused
Chairman.
Representative Geraldo. So with that, Representative Agelo, please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. If any of you have received your mail today, it's probably no surprise to you when I say that
I think you're right.
I have some questions about charter school operations in the state of Rhode Island. And that really goes for mayoral academies too. Both of these pieces of legislation would change the way that students are selected for entrance into charter schools, currently, or mayoral academies. Currently, parents who are interested in having their child in the school make that request. If there are more requests, more potential students than spaces in the school, there's a lottery. And those children whose names or numbers are drawn who win the lottery get to go to the charter school. All of those students whose parents didn't have the wherewithal to enter their children in the lottery lose out. I'd like to read from you some of the statement of legislative purpose that goes with our establishment of charter school law way back in 1995. I was in my third year in the House of Representatives when this legislation passed. Nancy Benoit was chair of the committee then, and I had my concerns about the idea of charter school based on my experience with my children in the Providence public schools and what I saw happen to some of the public schools with the establishment of talented and gifted programs, taking children out of one middle school, for instance. Nathan Bishop was the example I saw most closely, and moving those talented and gifted children to a charter school. Then it was Nathaniel Green. That had a severe impact, at least for the short term, on Nathaniel Bishop, in part because so many of the most concerned parents, the most aware and the most supportive parents, kind of went along with their kids to Nathaniel Green for those years. So in deciding whether I would vote for the charter school legislation back in 1995, I took the statement of purpose quite seriously, and I'm going to read from it now to you. And this is 16-77-3.1, and as I said, this passed in 1995. The purpose of this chapter is to provide an alternative within the public education system by offering opportunities for entities identified in 1677 2.1 to establish and maintain a high-performing public school program according to the terms of a charter. The key appeal of the charter school concept is its promise of increased accountability for student achievement in exchange for increased autonomy. That's Part A. Part B says charter schools are intended to be vanguards, laboratories, and an expression of the ongoing and vital interest in the improvement of education. Notwithstanding the provisions of this section or any law to the contrary, a charter school shall be deemed a public school acting under state law, etc. It goes on to say, these charter public schools shall be vehicles for research and development in areas such as curriculum, pedagogy, administration, materials, facilities, governance, parent relations and involvement, social development, instructors and administrators' responsibilities, working conditions, students' performance, and fiscal accountability. It is the intent of the General Assembly to create within the public school system vehicles for innovative learning opportunities to be utilized and evaluated in pilot projects. The provisions of this chapter are to be interpreted liberally to support the purposes set forth in this chapter and advance a renewed commitment to the state, to the mission goals and diversity of public education. Sadly, I think we failed. We haven't used the charter schools as models. We haven't observed where they succeed and try to take those methods, those whatever, and absorb them into our public school system. And that, in my mind, is a significant problem. I propose this legislation to kind of renew the challenge by making clear that the charter schools and the mayoral academies need to be available and a possibility for any student who's living in the relevant school district or districts and of the relevant age or at that grade level. And I think the way to do that is for all children who fit into that category to be entered into the lottery. If their name is drawn to go to the Paul Coffey Charter School in Providence, then the parents would be notified that their child has been selected to go to the Paul Coffey School. If the parents choose to send the child to the school, so be it. If the parents say, no, thank you, want to stay with Vartan Gregorian Elementary School, so be it also, and another name is drawn. I think this should be blind as to all aspects of who these children are so that we get good random sampling in our charter schools and our mayoral academies of all the students. And these schools really can serve then as kind of laboratories. You have a good idea? Show us. And on the other side, I think the Department of Education in the state and we as legislators ought to be looking at those charter schools and mayoral academies as models. And if we find, for instance, that a school is having 10 days more of school a year or an hour more of school every day, and students are doing significantly better, we should be thinking about that.
Right.
But I think we have to have the pool of students in the charter schools and mayoral academies be really reflective, be sure of that before we start. So that's why I've introduced this legislation. I realize that the lottery described in the legislation is cumbersome. I think there may be a way to make it simpler, and I'm certainly happy to hear about that.
Well, thank you, Representative Agelo. And I remember I was there as well, that first vote, and I remember the majority leader, George Colullo, getting up before we voted and saying that this is an experiment, and he mentioned it's going to be a laboratory where there's going to be transference into the public schools, and they'll have new methods, and it was quite different than what we have now with, you know, the corporations, large groups of schools. And I don't know, I don't see a lot of that. And the two examples of the most successful charter schools that, two of the things that they do, longer school years and longer days, you're right, that's something that surprisingly is beneficial, and especially for students that need a little bit more attention. So, are there any questions for Representative Agelo? Yes. Representative Phillips.
I understand the concept. My only question is time constraints for parents going back and possibly saying they don't want their kids to go to the charter school. There are a couple, and I can think of one in particular, but I think there's a couple of them that charter schools, charter high schools that draw from the whole state. So how cumbersome is that going to be for those two, at least that I'm thinking of, to be able to do a complete random drawing and give enough time for the parents to either say, yes, I want my child to go, or no, I don't want my child to go? And is it going to put an added burden on the charter schools themselves? Are they going to be able to fill the school before the start of school day?
I would suggest that if they backed up the time of the lottery, since we're not depending on parents applying, all children, we're not depending on parents or guardians to put their children in the lottery. All children are eligible, and if they're doing it now in April or May, maybe they start in January for the September school year.
But if they start in January, which I know one does start in January to get the pool going, is it going to have to be a year in advance for them to all put into the pool, or? I'm just a little unclear. I'm thinking about the extra work that the charter schools are going to have to entail in case they have, because the charter school I'm talking about, and I will be forthcoming, I'm on the board of directors of one of the charter schools, and they start in January. And they give the parents 2 weeks, or it's approximately 2 weeks, to say, after they get the letter, to say they either their child will go or their child won't go. It just seems like it's going to be really, they may have to start the July before for the next school year.
Mr. Chairman, may I ask
Yes, sure.
Representative a question? They start in January, and parents are given 2 weeks.
Correct.
At what point do they have the class solidified? Or mostly solidified?
Sometimes June. We've had students in as far as August that have backed out afterwards, and then they have to start the process all over again. So it depends on if the parents change their mind after they've accepted, and we've had that happen. So I mean, I just see the extra work that could be done, and I'm not saying I'm against the bill. I'm just saying that I can see on the other side where it could be additional work and spinning their wheels, because we have a student that comes from Newport to go to this school.
Yeah, I'm familiar with the school that I believe you're talking about, but I'm thinking about, there are many schools in our state. We have a private school in Hendricken that Representative McNamara is very familiar with, and they start like September or before of the 8th grade. Now I think they have 8th grade, but a year in advance, that's September. You have an open house, you invite, open it up to people. We see ads in the paper for charter schools and public and private schools. And a year in advance, you invite people, you make sure that they're aware of the educational product that you have and the quality. And, that's part, yes, Representative Caldwell.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, that's how the school my children go to works as well, starting in September. Actually, probably usually in the end of August, with open houses and application processes. That is pre-K through 12. Representative Agelo, thank you so much for bringing these bills forward. I think it seems to me that if the charters do want to act as laboratories, as that suggested, that it is best to implement an idea like this so there is a wide variety of students that are coming to them and figuring out how we're going to serve the needs of different students. You will have to forgive me that my email has been very overwhelmed for the past week, and I did not see anything from the charters in opposition to these bills. Have they talked to you about them and why they may be opposed to them, or?
We have a couple of witnesses.
Representative Caldwell, I did hear from Bill Lynch, who is the longtime lobbyist for the mayoral academies, and he said that they are in favor of the concept, would just rewrite the lottery mechanism. And as I said, I realize that is clumsy and could probably be simplified.
That's great, thank you.
And could the clerk please record that Representative Fenton Fung is here and she would like to be recorded in the affirmative? and Representative Alzate has also joined us, and she would also like to be recorded in the affirmative for the vote to hold for further study.
Yes, thank you, Chairman.
Yes, thank you, Chairman.
Are there any other questions for Representative Agelo?
Chairman,
Yes. Vice
Thank
Chair
you,
Amore.
Chairman. I appreciate it. Representative Agelo, thank you for introducing these bills. Just to address Representative Phillips' question, and I think the chairman and Representative Bia can confirm this, in large urban and urban ring districts, they enroll everybody into a schedule. And then many of those kids are not in that schedule. That schedule's redone again. And then you have kids transferring in from out of state, from out of district, from DCYF. So the districts are able at a much larger scale to be nimble in scheduling all these students based on enrollment and producing a schedule for them at the start of September. So I do agree with Representative Phillips that it does place a further burden on them, but it is doable, especially with the technology we have in scheduling today that, again, Representative Bia can confirm, which allows us to be pretty nimble in doing this. So thank you, Chairman.
Yep. And Representative Amore, when I was at Shea and Pawtucket, we always had large cohorts of students that would be starting that we didn't really expect, but it just depended on what was happening around the world in our case. Are there any further questions for Representative Agelo? We have, first witness is Bill Fisher, graduate of Pilgrim High School in Warwick, along with Representative Caldwell and myself. Mr. Fisher,
Mr.
please
Chairman,
proceed.
am I live?
You're live. Welcome.
It's Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. It's nice to be here with you this afternoon. My name is Bill Fisher. I represent Rhode Island mayoral academies, which currently comprises Blackstone Valley Prep, Achievement First, and Rise Prep. I can tell you prior to this hearing, I had reached out to the sponsor, and I believe we had a pleasant conversation regarding the intent of this bill, and I want to let the committee know we support the intent of this bill. I've also reached out to Representative Amore, and we've had multiple conversations about this over the years. And quite frankly, I think it's become a distraction, and I wanted to resolve the distraction. In my conversations with Rep. Amore, he has talked to me often about engaged parents, and siphoning engaged parents, I think in his mind, I don't want to speak for him, means those that actually reach out and apply to a lottery or fill out an application for charter school. And I understand his reasoning and his logic around that. And so instead of an opt-in lottery where parents have to opt in and proactively do this, I can tell you that we really want to solve this. I would point out to the committee that we are willing to work with the sponsor. We are willing to work with Rep. Amore and RIDE to solve this and create an opt-in lottery system that A, works and doesn't become overly bureaucratic. I'll also tell the committee that RIDE in the fall started what was called common enrollment, and it was a volunteer pilot program where parents could enter a portal and apply to multiple charter schools. Every mayoral academy in the state is part of that process, and I think RIDE could play a role possibly in smoothing out the bureaucratic nature of some of the language here, particularly with the districts, the ping-ponging back and forth between us and these students. I know Rosalind Cruz from Rise Prep is on after me at some point where she can answer technical questions. But I did reach out to Representative Agelo because in a good faith, sincere effort to say, let's address this, let's work together. I think we can find common ground here on this. And so as Mr. Chairman, good faith commitment here that we really want to work with Rep. Amore, Rep. Agelo, and others to find some language that works. on the timeline question, and I'll turn it back for questions, but I can tell you that open enrollment started in the fall, and that ran all the way. The application period for the current lottery closed on 3/18 for a lottery that's going to be held on 4/1. I agree with Rep. Agelo about possibly moving the timeline back, and I can tell you lastly, before I turn it over if there's any questions, that long ago when we were working with Mayor Tavares on thinking about an opt-out lottery when Achievement First was coming online, one of the things we talked about potentially was holding back a pool of seats because Providence is such a transient population, folks moving out of the city and into the city, that maybe there was a reserve 10% or 15% where folks would have an opportunity. So that's just something to think about, but we're pledging to do the work to make this happen, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Fisher. Yeah, I know in Pawtucket the mobility rate was about 20% of your students, and that's when you're dealing with 10 to 12,000 students. That's a lot of students moving around, but it depends. We'd see when there were fluctuations from cities and rent charges of housing, would see these fluctuations. Are there any questions for Mr. Fisher? Yes, Representative Caldwell.
Thank you. Again, just in support of moving the whole timeline back, I know when a lot of parents consider charter schools for their kids, it might be because their current school is not working for their children. And since most of the private schools have a much earlier deadline than that, it's very hard to wait and see if you can get a spot in a charter school before applying and paying an application fee and sometimes a very hefty enrollment fee at another school to ensure that your kid has a place to go next year, that they might be happy. Yeah. So I think regardless of anything else, that would also be a huge step forward for a lot of parents.
Yeah, I would just quickly say that we're willing to work on timeline, but I would remind the committee, at least for the mayoral academies, that the overwhelming number of students that come into the system are coming into K. It's a K feeder, and so and that's where Rep. Amore and I have always had a lively debate about the concept of engagement versus creaming, because nobody is creaming kindergartners, right? We don't know how they identify if they need IEP or anything like that yet. They haven't. There's no categorical identifier to them. So most of our kids are coming into that K feeder program and then going through a K through 8. And so happy to work with anybody on timeline. I do think there's an opportunity here to work with RIDE on this common enrollment. They have built something, and I think there's an opportunity at least to consider that.
So thank you, Bill. So we can put you down as support. That's very good.
We signed up in support. We just want to work out with the process.
Yep, very good. Are there any further questions for Mr. Fisher? Very good. Thank you for your testimony, Bill. The next witness will be Ms. De Cruz. Welcome. Please proceed. Rosalind.
Good afternoon, members of the committee. My name is Stephanie Gonzalez. I'm
Stephanie
the chair
Gonzalez.
of the Central Falls
I'm
School.
sorry.
No.
Stephanie, welcome. Yes. Please proceed.
Okay. So I'm the chair of the Central Falls School Board of Trustees. I thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak today on House Bills 6021 and 6117. I first want to start off by saying that I wholeheartedly agree with the intent of these two bills. In fact, in Central Falls, we've started to have conversations about essentially putting forth a proposal that is very much outlined in this bill. I do have some concerns about some of the language in the bill. The first is that the way I read it is that it puts the onus of operationalizing this process on school districts. To be very frank, the district neither has the funding to operationalize this, nor do we want the responsibility of having to operationalize this for every independent charter and or mayoral academy that serves Central Falls students. We were thinking about this process being implemented in a way that was more centralized, so a process that was either housed at RIDE or even implemented through a third-party entity. And finally, I'll just end by saying that if Representative Agelo or other sponsors of the bill are interested in potentially piloting a version of this bill in a smaller scale, Central Falls would be interested, and by Central Falls I mean the Central Falls School District. We would be interested in having that discussion and having a conversation about a process that we could pilot in Central Falls, given that approximately 35 to 40% of school-age children in Central Falls attend charter schools. And I'll end my, my comments there, and certainly happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Stephanie. Are there any questions for Stephanie Gonzalez? Thank you very much for your testimony and your suggestions. We greatly appreciate it.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
And we had another witness, Rosalind DeCruz, and we tried to reach her and could not. And we have written testimony on this. Representative Phillips?
We do, Mr. Chairman. We have 2 written testimonies on these bills here, both of them from the same groups. The Rhode Island Federation of Teachers and Health Professionals, Mr. Frank Flynn, is in favor of both bills. And from RIDE, Mr. Andy Andrade is against both bills.
Oh. It's interesting. That concludes, are there any further questions? That concludes the hearing on 6021-6117. Thank you, Representative Agelo. The next bill that we're going to hear is by Representative Carson, House Bill 5833. Representative Carson, welcome and please proceed.
Thank you very much, Chairman. Hope everyone's doing well today. I'm going to talk today about this bill. This is the second year I've put this bill in. We've worked a lot on it over the past year. And fundamentally what the bill does is it creates an ombudsman for special education. And I often characterize it as somewhat of a parallel idea to the Child Advocate's Office. And I put this bill in largely at the request of parents who I believe you will be hearing from. And they'll tell you their own experiences about why they think we need an ombudsman. So the ombudsman would be an independent office. It would be set up with, it would be appointed by the governor. Commission is identified to, and the hiring process is the same as the child advocate. There would be a committee of folks that have unique specialties in special education. And they would go out and recruit an ombudsman to come in. The ombudsman would be empowered to do several things. They would be empowered to meet with parents, be an advocate for parents. They would be empowered to do audits in school districts. They would provide us with information once a year about what they're learning from school districts. Because I've never been on the education committee, and I think that we as a legislature probably need to focus a little bit more on special education. I think that particularly in the past year, I think that the special needs students have really been negatively affected by COVID. Many have not been in school. And I think that it's an opportunity for us to really have a professional in place that can keep us informed about what's going on in the special needs educational community, and they'd also have some power to intervene for parents and advocate for them. You know, one of the parent advocates that you'll be hearing from this afternoon told me about 2 years ago when I first started working on this that he was able to advocate for his special need child, but he was really concerned about the single mother in South Providence who speaks very little English. And when she has a meeting with the team in her community and they go over the IEP for her child, it's really, really scary for these folks. And having a resource that parents can go to would really be helpful for the needs of parents. That's the role of the ombudsman. The bill also goes on to do a couple of other things. I created what I call a parent evaluation form, and that is that when a parent goes into an IEP meeting, some of those meetings go well, and some of those meetings don't go very well. And I think that it would be useful for parents to be able to provide immediate feedback about how the IEP or even the 504 meeting has gone. So I'd like to see a parent evaluation form created so that the parent can give immediate feedback to the team, to the special ed director, even to the ombudsman about what their experience has been in the IEP meeting. Again, sometimes I think parents feel overwhelmed in these IEP meetings. I know I would. I think that the IEP teams are doing the very best they can, and I'm not being critical of them. But I think if we put ourselves in the shoes of those parents, there's 4 or 5 professionals sitting around a table, they're discussing your child. It can be a very intimidating and frightening situation. And sometimes parents leave and they don't feel as though they really understood what took place, or they don't feel as though they had a voice in the plan for their child. So I'd like to give parents the opportunity to give some feedback. And the evaluation forms, I'd like to see them go into the child's file. And to be honest with you, I think it creates a record of what the conversation is between the parents and the school districts. Because in the event that the parents need to take some kind of legal action, at least there's been some paperwork created that says, the parents have said for 2 or 3 years that they've been unhappy and they were concerned about the IEP implementation. At least the parents would have some feedback. They would have some record as to what their experiences were. So that would be the purpose of the meeting evaluation form, and it would be in the top languages of the state of Rhode Island. The other thing that I want to make sure parents understand is that there are the CLACs, which are the local special education committees. Now, as I understand it, based on my research and based on conversations with parents across the state, some CLACs are, very effective meeting, engaging parents, and some are not doing quite as well. And I know that Representative Cortravan has a bill specifically on the CLAC. A little bit of what's in her bill and my bill overlaps. But what I would like to make sure that when the parents leave the IEP meeting, that they're given information about the CLACs, that they're handed a piece of paper that says, here's the CLAC, if you want to get active in it. I think parents, they want to connect with each other. If I'm a parent of a child that's just been evaluated, I would be happy to know that there's this resource in my district. And I want to make sure that following the meetings, the parents are also given information about the CLAC. I really want the parents to leave the IEP meetings feeling like they were heard, they've evaluated, they've been given information about the CLAC, and they've also been given information about the ombudsman. That way parents feel empowered. I know that we've gotten I've gotten copies of some of the testimony that you're going to hear, and I was glad to see that some of the people that sent me copies of their testimony said that they had ideas for this, and I'm certainly open to conversations with folks about this bill. I mean, the bill's been in a year. We had it last year. It was heard last year, I think the last night we met before COVID. And, for people that oppose it, I want you to know that I'm available for you to call me and to tell me what your concerns are about this bill. I've only heard from maybe 1 or 2 people, so there's a real opportunity. I'm making myself available. There's been some criticism, I know, that this is duplication. There's been some criticism that RIDE already does audits every 5 years. There's been some duplication that there already exists at RIDE. Opportunities for parents to become more engaged. From my experience talking to parents, this is not what parents are saying. Parents are saying that they really are looking for an independent voice that they can go to. I think that there's some concerns in the bill, the way it's drafted as it relates to the rights of students over 18. and the fact that they might want some privacy from their parents. And I think that those comments are correct. I did try to address that because I understand for students over 18, you know, they have the right to privacy. And so I thought we covered that adequately in the bill, but it seems as though we may have missed a few things. I did put a price tag on this, which is $500,000, which I learned from the Child Advocate's Office was a good amount of money to begin this office with. Now, I've had a few other ideas and some more feedback that maybe we do this for a few years and get some data back, because there's been some criticism that maybe this problem is not as widespread as I've been told that it is. And so maybe we look at something more short term so that we can get some data back on what's going on. So I'm open to all of those ideas, and I'm really looking forward to a conversation about this idea and this bill. So thank you all very much for listening to my testimony today.
Thank you, Representative Carson. And I do see that we have Rhode Island Parent Information Network signed up, and that's a whole organization of advocacy that is very well known and located in Warwick on Jefferson Boulevard. I got to plug the local, yeah, little plug. Yeah, Critz, yeah, right. Not too far from Critz. Representative Caldwell, you have a question.
Thank you, Chairman. Representative Carson, thank you so much for submitting this bill. I am a co-sponsor of this bill and a very strong supporter of this. I do not believe it's incorrect that this is a widespread problem. Throughout the pandemic, I heard from so many parents in my district with students with special needs in East Greenwich who are not having their needs met in terms of their IEPs or any sorts of issues like that. I do believe you're going to hear from some of my constituents tonight if they're able to be reached. You know, this is such an important thing for these families who are already struggling, and they really need somebody helping to enforce what they deserve and what their kids deserve on the school district level. When parents are forced, you know, into a lawsuit or a situation like that because their needs aren't being met, they don't want to do that. That is not a good place for them to be. For all of us here who have children, you do not want to have to sue your school district so that they can get the education that they deserve. That's not a good outcome for anyone. And I hear from the parents in my district how much they support this bill, how much help they need, and how much a role like this is absolutely needed, especially now in our hopefully soon post-COVID education environment. So I just want to thank you for bringing this forward and say here on the committee that I really hope we can move forward with this bill. I strongly support it, and I think that it is absolutely necessary.
Are there any questions for Representative Carson? And hearing none, we'll go to our witnesses. We have two witnesses that are opposed. The majority of the witnesses are in support of this. And we will limit, for those witnesses that are listening, you will have 2 minutes, and we will give you a 30-second warning. So when you hear the 30-second warning, that's 30 seconds. You should start in conclusion and finish the sentence. So, and please make sure, focus on your time. Take out your cell phone, look at your cell phone, because you don't want other people to get frustrated because they're waiting and listening to you carry on, out of respect to your fellow citizens that are testifying. The first witness is Tim Groves, Association of Rhode Island Special Education Administrators. Welcome, please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Representative Carson. My name is Tim Groves, and I am here testifying on behalf of the Association of Rhode Island Administrators of Special Education, an organization known as ARISE, that is comprised of the directors of special education from public schools throughout our great state. I'm legal counsel to that organization and testifying in that capacity. I'm here to voice Arise's opposition to H5833 this afternoon and highlight the reasons for that opposition. I think our membership certainly appreciates the spirit in which this bill is offered, but takes issue with some of the contents. And Arise has submitted written testimony that gets into some of the drafting issues in more granular detail. I'm happy to entertain any questions on that written testimony, but for purposes of hopefully brief oral testimony, I'll highlight the bigger picture issues, and then again, welcome questions on anything else that was in our written submission. The repetition issue or redundancy issue that Carson touched on is among the objections that we have. Under the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, the state education agency, in this instance RIDE, is responsible for the general supervision of ensuring that the IDEA requirements, again, IDEA, sorry, there's a lot of jargon and acronyms in special education, as we know.
Tim, we're coming up on 30 seconds.
I only have 30 seconds? Oh, I apologize. I didn't hear that part. I muted. I apologize. Okay, so I think the ombudsperson, number one, then I guess the issue that I would highlight is the conflicts that are inherent in this position. You've got an ombudsperson who's set up to be an advocate for parents, to conduct a full investigation with the discretion to, over IEPs, and then that person also owes a duty of confidentiality to the adverse party in that proceeding, in which the ombudsperson would also act as the arbiter. So I would say that's a legally impossible situation.
Okay.
It's also...
Tim, could you conclude, please? I'm sorry.
I will absolutely...
Yeah, thank you. Please proceed.
And I apologize. I didn't realize we only had 30 seconds.
No,
I'd say this is redundant.
You had 2 minutes, and that's a 30-second warning that the 2 minutes is up.
I misunderstood, and I wasted a lot of my time misunderstanding that, so I apologize. I think one thing, if I just might in closing, just in terms of how well the situation, how well we are set up, and the conditions that are in place to handle these disputes are working. According to the Center for Appropriate Dispute Resolution in Special Education, the aggregate per capita number of state and due process complaints filed in Rhode Island in 2018-19, the most recent year that we have data for, it was half the national average. And Rhode Island successfully mediated due process complaints at a rate that was 66% higher than the national average. So I think, in large part, we may have a solution in search of a problem. We've got systems in place that are working well and that are federally mandated. And I think this is well-intended legislation that is meant to be a step forward, but I think it trips over some foundational, federal legislation and may, given the duplication of efforts here, create more confusion than it will inject clarity.
Thank you.
So again, I apologize for going over time, and I appreciate the indulgence of the chairperson.
Thank you. Are there any questions for Mr. Groves? And his written testimony is available also. Any questions? Thank you. The next witness, Walter Steenbergen. Walter, you have 2 minutes. Please proceed.
Okay, thank you so much.
Please proceed.
Yes. Hi, I will mute myself here. Hi, my name is Walt Steenbergen from Woonsocket. My representative is Steve Lima. I ask that the Education Committee consider passing this bill. I'm also going to ask that you don't believe me. Our parents group is over 100 strong and also includes some special education teachers and advocacy organizations. Please don't believe me, believe them. We've been speaking with stakeholders and groups that are in education. Many of them receive state and federal dollars to provide these services. And we hear the ombudsman is repetitive, right? Has to make sure these services are delivered. And we say, why are there 100+ parents in a group saying they're not? Is RIDE taking the federal funding to serve special needs and not delivering? The Ombudsman will collect data from every IEP interaction and will be able to identify which districts need help. We're told this is a terrible idea. Why? Don't you want to know where the problems are? I thought it was all handled. thousands of calls to Ride and Ripen hotline looking for help, and only a handful of due process hearings every year, as Tim just said. Must mean that all of those thousands of calls are being fielded, logged, investigated, advocated for, and resolved, right? After all, everyone has access to due process. Everyone also has access to a private jet. I know, you can call an organization like Disability Rights. Do you have any idea how backlogged they are? But please, don't believe me. Due process costs between $10,000 and $75,000. Is it any wonder that we have so few of them here in the state?
That's
And that's quite a
30-second
gamble.
warning.
When the outcome depends on which of the 5 ride hearing officers you're assigned. Again, don't believe me. Believe the SPED attorneys, the parents, the advocacy organizations who will tell you which ones lean which way. There are federal civil rights complaints right now against districts and RIDE. Let me ask you, are you going to believe it's being handled? Please don't believe me. Please meet with us. We'd love to have the discussion. Thank you for your time. We really appreciate you hearing us out.
Thank you, Walter. Are there any questions for Mr. Steenbergen? Thank you. Next, we have Priscilla Steenbergen. Ms. Steenbergen, welcome. Please proceed.
Hi.
Please proceed.
My name is Priscilla. Hi, my name is Priscilla Steenbergen from Woonsocket. I'm speaking in support of House Bill 5833 because of a journey that no one should have to take. This is excerpts of ours. We had a son, Charlie, who when born seemed like others but really wasn't. He had an incurable disease that could cause tumors, deafness, blindness, and learning disorders were likely. For some years, he grew and developed like most children, but then differences became apparent, new diagnoses were made, and he needed help in school. We worked with the district to draft an IEP and were overjoyed at the help our child was to receive until we learned that not all the directives were being followed. Charlie started to become overwhelmed as he grew, school assignments advanced, and adolescence struck. I found him one night hanging from his ceiling fan. It was not his first attempt, nor would it be his last. He did well for a short time after entering high school until he didn't. We lost countless hours from work, going to many school meetings to seek adherence to the IEP. Are many parents able to do that? Teachers are limited to how much they can do or control the edicts of the district. The district lied to us and promised they would keep Charlie safe, even when they knew they couldn't as a regular high school. We offered to meet them halfway and contribute financially as we wanted to do what was best for Charlie while understanding their financial limitations. After more self-harm attempts and under medical advice, we pulled Charlie from the district. We then unilaterally placed him in a residential therapeutic school in Utah. Are all households able to do this? Attorneys had been brought in on both sides and RIDE decisions made that emotionally and financially drained us. RIDE defies federal law.
To go.
In conclusion.
Thank you. RIDE defies federal law and empowers districts to do the same, as well as break their own rules. These programs need oversight. It is too late for Charlie to receive the fair and appropriate education to which he was entitled in Rhode Island. No one else should have to have this story. This bill could start the reform. Please support House Bill 5833 to help eliminate these stories. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Steinbergen. Any questions for this witness? The next witness is Joanna Sochi, Arc of Rhode Island. Welcome, please proceed.
Able to do this? Attorneys have been brought.
Hello?
Yes, welcome, please proceed.
Thank you. Hi, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Thank you for hearing Bill 5833 to establish an ombudsman office of special education. My name is Joanna Skokie. I am a mom, first of all, a trained certified educational advocate from William & Mary Law School, and the state director of the Arc of Rhode Island, which is a national organization with over 600 chapters nationwide. Over the years, I've spoken about education, particularly dyslexia legislation, and yet it still seems that some people believe that special education supports and services are just fine in Rhode Island. However, nothing could be farther from the truth. There are families who have financial means to hire independent special education advocates or attorneys. However, there are hundreds who cannot. It costs money, knowledge of Rhode Island and federal educational rights. It is a full-time job, and it takes perseverance to advocate for the supports and services while a school district says that their child does not need something. Today, parents are fighting a culture of, if you don't like our decision to file legal action, go ahead and file legal action. Not a great way to move our purported Department of Education goal of family engagement into today's world. I implore you to recognize that we need to track and monitor parental concerns and issues through an independent office that will assist parents of disabled children and give you, the legislators, the data that shows the breadth of compliance in eligibility, development, and deliberation of special education services. Right now, there is no independent body to go to. There is no data being collected by calls, by disability, by school, by district, or that tracks the reoccurring issues that are correctable for non-compliance to the laws in educating disabled children.
30-second warning, Ms. Oti.
I'm sorry?
30 seconds to go.
Simply declaring that Rhode Island does not get many complaints or have many legal actions is not an accurate picture. Parents can't afford it. We're asking you to recognize what we must begin to identify what we are lacking in our education system and truly support early, consistently, and truly educate our kids. Thank you.
Thank you, Joanna. Any questions for this witness? Next witness is Sheila Coyne. Oh, excuse me, Chris Simonelli. Welcome, please proceed.
Yes. Hi, my name is Chris Simonelli, and I am from Middletown, Rhode Island, and I support the IEP bill before us, number 5833. I want to thank you for the opportunity to participate in this. Thank you also for your service to our great state of Rhode Island. My wife and I are the proud parents of a beautiful daughter who's autistic and currently lives in a group home. They do a wonderful job for her at the group home. We bring her home on Saturdays. Our rest of our family comes over. We have a wonderful get-together. I take her to Frosty Freeze, maybe you're familiar with that, Middletown, or the Creamery for ice cream cones, and we drive around Ocean Drive, and we listen to rock music together. She loves it. And at the end of the day, she goes back to see her friends at the group home. She asked for that. So she recently turned 18, and through the many years of her education in the Rhode Island system, we have struggled to understand the process and get disappointed each year at the lack of follow-up on the education plans that were developed. We certainly could have used an independent advocate such as the ombudsman being proposed in this bill to bounce questions off of and help us better understand our rights and our daughter's rights in the system. As a side note, I am on the DD Council, the Rhode Island DD Council. I'm the vice chair and the chair of the Rhode Island Force Group, which is the Rhode Island Families Organized for Reform, Change, and Empowerment. And the motto is, here for each other, here for our families. In January 2018, 60 families completed a survey.
30-second warning, Mr. Simonelli. 30 seconds to go.
And I submitted this with the testimony. High on their list of concerns and that need to be identified as the present disability system was the lack of IEP and ISP, follow-up, not meeting goals, and no progress. They said it looks good on paper and sounds good, but doesn't usually match what is actually happening. While the intentions are admirable to create an IEP system, the lack of follow-up integrity of the system drives the need for a strong independent advocate to design and reinforce the goals set in the program, such as the design of this bill before you.
Thank you.
Please vote in favor of bill number 5833. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions for this witness? Yeah.
I'll take it.
Yep.
Hi, Chris. I gotta hear. Hey, Chris. It's Barbara Ann Fenton Funk. How are you?
Excellent. How are you doing?
Oh, great. Great to hear your voice. We got 1 week to go before Frosty Freeze opens, too, so I'll probably see you there next week. April 1st, every year. Everybody on the island knows exactly what I'm talking about right now, too. Chris, I just want to bring you back to your experiences throughout your years. I forgot your daughter is already 18. It feels a lot. She feels a lot younger than that, too, having known you guys for a while. At what, in the process, what, in your own experience, what was the most frustrating part for you? Was it elementary, or as she kind of went on in the school system that you really felt that there was a breakdown?
Oh, that's a really good question. First of all, my wife's the champion in this. She's the expert, okay? But my experience has been that it was in elementary, in Melville, Then we transferred to Bradley because they seemed to have a little more attention to what was going on and to the Bradley High School. So there was a little more attention there, but it was through the whole level, because at the end of the year you would review the IEP, and there were just so many things that weren't even started. And then again, while we were developing the program and developing the IEP, there were some rights that we just didn't know that we had. And that's why I felt that when I saw this bill, having an independent advocate makes so much sense.
Thank you. And that was the right answer, that your wife has been a champion. She's been wonderful throughout this entire process, I know, for sure. Thanks again for all you do. And again, thanks for your support of this bill.
Absolutely. You have a great day.
Are there any further questions for Chris? Thank you very much for your testimony, Chris. Sheila Coyne? Ms. Coyne? Welcome. Please proceed, Ms. Coyne.
Thank you. That wasn't an answer that your wife had. Hi, Mr. Chairman, can you hear me?
Yes, please proceed.
Hi, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee, thank you for this opportunity to speak. My name is Sheila Coyne. I am a wife, mother, a business owner, and an advocate for people with developmental disabilities. I live in Barros, Rhode Island. My 25-year-old son has autism, and I have spent the last 2.5 decades fighting a broken system. I thought I was past the heartache of special education. However, I've been approached by numerous families that are so disappointed and frustrated and almost overcome by fear and exhaustion from our school system that I have returned to advocate for the most vulnerable children in our schools. I am unhappy to report that special education in many ways is worse off than it was 20 years ago. I'm a retired correctional officer from the Rhode Island Department of Corrections. I was responsible for a cell block with 116 incarcerated males, and I maintained order on a daily basis. It was a walk in the park compared to the angst I feel when I head into an IEP as an advocate. The prison has rules and regulations for both officers and inmates, and breaking the rules has consequences for both sides. It's the consequences that hold people accountable, and this accountability fosters mutual respect. Unfortunately, we don't have the same accountability in our school systems. I have attended IEPs that did not follow proper procedures. I've seen children with documented disabilities that have been denied special education. I have seen meetings be shut down via Zoom while parents and doctors were still speaking. This is what the school administrators are doing. They're getting away with it, and there's no one to hold them accountable. This is why we need the Ombudsman Office to hold school districts accountable, because without the consequences, rules and regulations are meaningless. We obey the speed limit or risk getting a ticket. We don't leave our children or our pets in the car unattended because it's wrong. Why are we allowing our educators not to teach our children to read? I think this is also wrong, and it should be criminal. Let's work together, let's fix this broken system, and let's ensure our most vulnerable children receive the education they have a lawful right to. Thank you for your time, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Are there any questions for Ms. Coyne? Thank you very much for your testimony, Ms. Coyne. Kathleen Madeira. Welcome. Please proceed. Kathleen. Welcome. Please proceed, Kathleen.
Good afternoon. My name is Kathleen Madeira, and I'm a single mom to 2 special needs children in Newport. Khalil is 6 and has autism and ADHD, and Khalil is 7 and Castiel is 6, and Castiel was born 3 months early and has a few developmental delays. I'm in support of this bill, and the following story is why. After leaving an abusive marriage in July, we moved to Newport in December. Newport is my hometown, and I was finally able to register the kids right after Christmas break because we were on quarantine due to my son Khalil's close contact his last day in Tiverton schools. There was some confusion about whether my children needed in-school placement because the program could not support the burden of 2 additional students. When asked when Rome would be made available to support their needs, I was told when COVID restrictions were lifted and was made to feel like an uncompassionate human by the special needs director, Ms. Andrews. Surely I must have known there was a pandemic amongst us. And of course I realized such because it had ruined my home, my marriage, and my entire life leading up to the moment of everything that happened with the school department. My 2 children were not able to handle distance learning because their IEPs require one-on-one person, in-person direct support. And I'm a single mom with a full-time job. How could I do that? I begged for the school for help, to which they offered to set up an in-home para through Looking Upwards. In the meantime, all of this happening I was calling any and everyone who could help. Right then, the CNDC, the pediatric doctor, RIDE, ARC, the school committee, the city council, Channel 10 News, and even opened up a DCYF case on myself for support. All because at this time it was a decision to work to support my children or struggle to manage their cooperation with distance learning to the best of our abilities. Having just been promoted, moving to Newport, my bills increasing, I needed to work in order to support my family.
That's 30-second warning coming up.
30 seconds.
At the time of my contact with RIDE, when I requested mediation, we set a date and the school recanted their participation 2 days before and was going to force me into due process, which would cost thousands of dollars. I just quickly want to say my children have gone 3 months without education provided by the public education department. They both have
Ms. Madeira,
severe delays.
that is 2 minutes. I'm sorry.
No worries. I appreciate you guys' time. I also submitted written testimony with a picture of my children.
Oh, beautiful. Thank you very much for your testimony. Any
You're
questions
very
for
welcome.
this
Have a
witness?
great day, guys. God bless.
Thank you. Kelly Lynn DeAngelis. Please proceed.
Hello?
Yes, please proceed. You have 2 minutes.
Okay. I am a parent and we are currently in the Barrington School District. I believe that this bill is critical because it provides transparency and oversight to a system that is exceptionally difficult and frustrating to navigate. I am the parent of a child with a diagnosed disability. For the last 3 years, the educators, specialists, and administration at my son's school have recognized that he was and is still having difficulty learning and falling farther and farther behind. He was diagnosed and accommodations were made via 504 and eventually referred to special education in order to receive more resources. We have wasted 3 years trying to obtain the educational resources required to assist my son, and each month and year he falls farther behind. My child's right to an equal education is compromised every day that he does not get the resources he needs, a legal right that I as a parent should not have to fight for. Every resource my son has and will have access to has come as a result of our tireless fight with great emotional cost. The truth of the matter is that parents of children with disabilities do not have a voice. We are often not heard and only taken seriously too late in the process. How do you expect the education system to hold itself accountable when they are the ones who are the exact parties who have the most to lose when admitting fault?
That's a 30-second warning coming up.
The public education system for children with disabilities is broken, and this bill is the first step in making strides to correct the inequities that are occurring in every school system. Why are we withholding educational resources from children who have a disability through no fault of their own, many of them born with their respective disability?
That is 2 minutes, Ms. DeAngelis.
Thank you very much for your testimony, Ms. DeAngelis. We greatly appreciate it. Are there any questions for Ms. DeAngelis? Hearing none, we'll move on to the next witness. Heather Kennedy, please. CLAC Chair, I hate these acronyms that get thrown around. Welcome, Ms. Kennedy. And this is special education Legislative Advocacy Committee, is
Yes.
that? Okay, please proceed. You have 2 minutes.
Hello, thank you. I am a parent of 2 students with disabilities, and I am an adult with a disability. I am also a CELAC chair, special education advocate, and facilitator. I support the idea of an ombudsman office. I agree that independent oversight would be helpful to ensure that students with disabilities and their families receive an education according to federal law and provides a greater chance at post-secondary life success. Over the years, I've helped many families who feel discouraged and dissuaded in their pursuit of equal opportunity and access to our education system for their children. Parents fight for what they believe is the right thing to do for their child, and then give up because the current system can feel overwhelming and confusing. It would be beneficial to know if these families and students are being appropriately helped or being gaslit as they claim. A different accountability system would also answer many doubts I hear about the existing special education and 504 formal complaint system, especially for 504 families who struggle with less formal structure. An ombudsman system could also prove beneficial to RIDE and school districts by reflecting on what they are doing well and allowing other schools to learn from that success. In addition, providing education to parents on the reasonable and unreasonable demands and expectations of schools and teachers would be helpful. I would also believe it would be beneficial to have access to more data and metrics to make future decisions on what is or is not working for this population of students.
That's a 30-second
I cannot comment. Okay. I cannot comment if the law's current language reflects the best ombudsman structure going forward. It may need more discussion. As for the CELAC part of the bill, I currently do not support it. I think that discussion is needed with current stakeholders, such as other CELAC chairs and myself, before going forward. Thank you so much for taking the time to listen.
Thank you, Ms. Kennedy. Are there any questions for this witness? Thank you. Renee Smith. Or Rainey Smith. Welcome. Please proceed.
Hi, good afternoon, members of the committee. My name is Renee. I live in Coventry. I support this Bill 5833 because my son Dylan was traumatized in a special education program in my district. He was diagnosed with autism, but despite his diagnosis and difficulty functioning in the classroom, we fought for over a year for a 504, then an IEP. Positive reinforcement was part of the IEP, but not enforced until a year later. I began to receive calls to pick him up from school, then regular calls that 911 was contacted and to arrive before the ambulance. Soon he was placed in a program in that same school for children with autism, which included a secluded area in the middle of the classroom with an entrance that was blocked to keep him from leaving. After being dragged into this room several weeks, Dylan learned work avoidance, resulting in trauma due to his experience in 0 grades for nearly the first half of school. The more he was restrained and secluded, the less he was interested in schoolwork, resulting in a spiral of restraint and seclusion due to the inability to support his IEP. During one incident, 911 was called. My husband arrived, and the police officer threatened our then 6-year-old that if he didn't compose himself, dress, and leave with his dad, Dylan would be removed forcibly from school in handcuffs naked. He had taken his clothes off in that space as a clear act of despair and frustration that children with autism sometimes exhibit when they can't communicate their feelings. He was since put in an appropriate placement after that event in our district and is succeeding. My family and I have been traumatized by the events at his old school. Dylan had to teach himself how to write his letters, missing so much of his class time. Our family had to learn coping mechanisms to withstand the daily stresses of stresses in therapy
That's
to
30
handle
seconds, Ms. Smith. 30 seconds.
Newly formed anxiety disorders. If there was an independent group to speak to and investigate the situation, it's possible that this trauma could have been avoided. The school department stated that RIDE required that our son had to fail before further supports could be provided. I'm speaking in support of the proposed bill as a way for parents to receive objective feedback in response to any special education concerns. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Smith. Are there any questions for this witness? Thank you very much for your testimony. And next we have Mr. Sam Salganic from the Rhode Island Parent Information Network. Mr. Salganic, welcome. Rypan. Please proceed.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. My name is Sam Salganic, and I'm the Executive Director at the Rhode Island Parent Information Network. I want to start by acknowledging some of the difficult stories that you all just heard, and probably some more that you will hear tonight. There really are some gaps in our system. There are some things that work well, and there are some things that we can improve. And we really want to thank the committee and the sponsors of this bill for their attention to children with disabilities and their families. RIPEN is the federally designated Parent Training and Information Center for Special Education in Rhode Island. That we've held that designation for 30 years. It's under the U.S. Department of Education program. It gives us a role in supporting families one-on-one and also with trainings and workshops. We are a peer-led organization, so that means that a majority of our board are parents of children with disabilities, and about 3/4 of our staff are also parents of children with disabilities. And we are very, very closely connected to this mission. We support about 1,000 families every year who need help navigating the system. And we reach about 1,000 more with our trainings and workshops. And we attend about 500 IEP meetings throughout the state in an average year.
That's the 30-second warning coming up.
Wow.
Thank you. So we support the goal of this legislation, but we also feel that it's not quite ready for passage. I think Rep. Carson mentioned we worry a little bit about some of the duplication with some already existing systems, and obviously there's an efficiency issue, but also a clarity issue for parents, understanding what the clear process is for parents and who they can go to at each step. We also have some concerns around the evaluation forms that go into a student's record. A lot of the families we work with would prefer to give that type of feedback anonymously. But again, we support the spirit of this bill, and we stand ready to work together with Representative Carson and other co-sponsors and the rest of the committee to move it along.
That's 2 minutes.
Yep.
Thanks.
Sam,
thank you.
We've met before. Welcome. And so, once again, how many IEP meetings does RIPEN has? About, you said 500?
We attend about 500 in average year, yep.
And for this position, I think the estimated budget is around $500,000 that Representative Carson had mentioned. Do you think that's a realistic budget to oversee the IEP meetings in the entire state and evaluate?
That's a great question, and I speak to that a little bit in my written testimony.
Okay.
I think it depends on how much volume will come to the ombudsman and on how the scope of their work will be defined. But I think based on what's written in the statute with sort of serving as a point of contact for families, attending IEP meetings, and also conducting audits, and also issuing reports,
right.
I think that it would be very difficult to do the job effectively at that budget.
And Sam, you're an attorney, correct?
I am, yes.
I had the pleasure of, she was probably one of the founders of RIPEC, or early in the beginning in the 70s, a woman who was also an attorney. She taught a graduate course at Providence College when she was with RIPEN, and then she ran for Attorney General, Arlene Violet. So you've got a big, and when she was in your position, I have to say that she did a wonderful job, and I've seen your agency for the past like 3-4 decades evolve to, it seems, a much more efficient level then you had a couple of years or decades where things were a little bit quieter or understaffed. But I think you're really back on track, and it's a program that's very commendable. Representative Kislak has a question.
Hi, yes, thank you, Mr. Slagonic, and thank you for your spoken and written testimony. I am wondering, listening to these stories and knowing families and hearing their stories in other contexts, I know that we need to do better providing adequate support to families with kids with disabilities and to school systems serving them. And I'm wondering what you think it'll take, or what the gaps are that we can and should be filling.
That's a great question. Thank you, Representative Kislak. I think that in our work, I think, or I hope, I mean, we strive to do a good job at the beginning with families, preparing for an IEP meeting, understanding your rights, and going to that meeting. I'll admit that we are not always staffed or able, if a family has gone through the regular process with the schools and they've gone to their meetings, they've asked for what they need, and they're still not getting it. And when the situation escalates, we are staffed. We're a peer-led organization. We're staffed by parents of children with disabilities. We are not attorneys. And we're not really set up to handle the more adversarial cases that come up. And that can be a gap in the system. And I think that's a place where something like an ombudsman or potentially a legal service, extra funding for legal services support or something like that could have a real impact. I would also, I think, RIDE has a role in conducting audits of districts, but I think, frankly, we think the audits aren't frequent enough. And when problems are identified, not enough is done to make sure that they get corrected. Did that help that sort of address your question, Representative Kislak?
Yes, thank you.
Representative Fenton Fung.
I apologize. I'm not going to do as great a name as Representative Kislak did with your last name, so my apologies. I have a question for you. I'll give you my perspective. I'm also one of the co-sponsors, just to put it out there. As a physical therapist, I have been in these IEP meetings as a consultant, as a person on the team. My sister-in-law has special needs, and my mom is the president of the Association of School Committees. So I just want to put it out there so nobody accuses me of bias or whatnot. How about percentage-wise, and you don't have to have the exact number, but just roughly, how many families where English is not their native language do you service?
We serve in our special education programs, it's 10 to 15% of our cases, we're serving them in Spanish. So, it's our Spanish-speaking staff, and we're providing the service in Spanish. I don't have a great number of how many we serve in English who might speak a different primary language at home. Okay. And we also use a language line for non-Spanish languages, but that is pretty infrequent.
So
did that answer the question?
It does. What I get what I'm saying at here is, one, if you listen to all these stories, we're seeing a pattern, one, about families with children with autism and somewhere on the spectrum. I think we have to also acknowledge as practitioners that most families, they never get to have that off switch when you have a family member with autism. Okay, their entire life is always on and always worrying about something, about the next sensory tech, whatever. So I think we need to do a little bit better in IEP meetings. I've seen them where it's just realizing that the parents are under so much stress and they're not hearing everything. And so I think when we're hearing these stories over and over, we're seeing a problem that can be fixed, but there seems to be an area we need to focus on kids on the spectrum. That's one. My other question is, I know for a fact that families who have a kid with special needs where English is not their primary language, these IEP meetings are incredibly intimidating, okay? We also they might not know about you guys and all the amazing work you perform. I would put a guess, and this is just an educated guess, I say, that in Providence and Woonsocket and Cranston and some of the bigger cities, maybe they don't know all about the great stuff you do, and they're not reaching out for those services. I can't imagine, say you're a family who's Chinese, okay, and primarily Chinese speaking, a new immigrant to this country, and having a child with special needs. Going into these meetings, you're not going to get the best out of that meeting, just no matter how great the teachers and everybody else who organized it is, because you're not understanding the system. And I think there's an opportunity here, especially in the urban core, that we need to take advantage of it and improve as far as working with some of these families that English isn't their native language, and to involve them and wrap them in and make sure that their child is getting the best care. And it just sounds like when I'm talking to you right now that perhaps we're missing that boat, and it's not because of anything you guys are doing, but I think that we might not be communicating well enough that there are services around, and making sure those services are in languages like Spanish, like Cambodian, like Chinese. And I think that's an opportunity that we need to focus on in the next few years. Thank you.
Are there any?
Thank you very, very much for that, Representative Fenton-Fung. I agree wholeheartedly. We are, of course, we are somewhat known in Providence and Central Falls and Woonsocket, but that is absolutely a high priority for us over the next couple of years, and something that we're already working hard on improving at.
Well, are there any further questions for Sam? Sam, thank you very much.
Thank you, Chairman.
Appreciate your testimony. Maureen LaChapelle. Welcome. Please proceed. Ms. LaChapelle, please proceed.
Hi, my name is Maureen. I wanted to tell my story today, so I appreciate you hearing it. My husband and I, we are a parent of a child with a complex learning disability, and I am in favor of this bill because my husband and I tried for 4 years to educate the public school my daughter attended regarding her disability. But instead we felt punished by having important things removed from her IP that she really needed. The ripple effect of the school's dismissive attitude had a major impact on our daughter and our family, and the belief that our children were safe at public school was shattered. After 4 years of fighting for our daughter's educational rights and reaching out to anyone who would listen, we were advised to do a unilateral move to an amazing private school here in Rhode Island. This way we could prove that her being in the right environment and having the right accommodations, she would learn. And she did. She has thrived. Her IQ has gone up by 10 points. And she is no longer borderline intellectually functioning, but in the below average category. And as she continues to receive the support that she needs, we know that she will continue to make huge gains. She is no longer, as we thought and how we were treated, sludge in a well-working machine. She is now a major part of an amazing working machine. Unfortunately, because we used all of our retirement funds to do this unilateral placement and prove she could learn, we had to accept a settlement that was truly insulting.
That's
Just
30
one more
seconds warning, Mr.
validation of
Chappelle.
our broken public system. My husband and I are asking as parents with a child with special needs for you to hear us and truly listen to every parent that has spoken or will speak to understand how important this bill will help so many families feel safe going to an outside office that is not attached to the public school system or RIDE, and to hold our public school system accountable for not following the rights of our children.
That's 2
Thank
minutes.
you.
Thanks.
Thank you. Are there any questions for this witness? Next witness, Ashley Scunzio.
This bill will help so many families feel safe going to an outside office that is not attached to the public school system or RIDE, and to hold our public school system accountable.
Should she turn off her computer or something?
You can turn her off the volume.
I can put it on mute.
Okay. Please proceed. Can we hear you?
Yep, are you
Yes,
able
that's
to hear
good.
me?
Yes, please proceed.
Okay, great. Hi, my name is Ashley. I'm from North Providence. I'm also on the board of the Down Syndrome Society of Rhode Island. I support this bill because of a simple reminder I was given when my daughter was born with Down syndrome, that if we challenge her, she'll rise. We need to challenge our schools to do better by our children. 37 years ago, my sister struggled with Tourette's. My parents paid lawyers to keep her in school and keep her fighting to get an education, and she was placed outside when she was too noisy or in a storage closet. I fast forward to my now 4-year-old that was trying to learn how to just safely walk on the stairs, something you and I take for granted. She was not only not working towards that goal, but her option to work towards that goal was in a janitor's closet. So we fought against also, and I quote, "It's not in the budget to receive her a one-on-one to keep her safe," because she was not only unsafe to herself and her classmates, but a flight risk. We haven't changed our ways. I've called RIPEN to get help, and I ended up finding myself needing to help educate our teachers in Down syndrome. We challenged our daughter's educators, and they rose to the occasion. They wanted to learn more about specialized training, and so I worked with some colleagues on the Down Syndrome Society of Rhode Island to provide that to them. I commend them and how hard they've worked to work better with my daughter. It's something as simple as training, if we identify that need, could be so altering to these individuals' paths to success.
Ms. Gunzer, that's 30 seconds to go.
Great. I feel like we've shook the leaves off the tree, but this bill attacks the roots of the tree, and that's what we really need to do. We really need to ask our state to do better by our special education students.
Thank you very much, Ms. Scungio. Are there any questions for this witness? Thank you, Ashley. The
You're
next
welcome.
witness is Kayla Correa. Welcome. Please proceed. You have 2 minutes.
Thank you for your time. My name is Kaylee, and I support this bill number 5833. I work at Rhode Island Advocacy for Children as an admin assistant, and I never would have imagined how many phone calls we get each week from parents that are quote-unquote ready to give up, feel hopeless, and feel they're being bullied by the very people that should be helping them and their child succeed in their educational journey. I have teared up numerous times from the stories these parents share with me. The helplessness and fear in their voices is honestly heartbreaking. This isn't how it should be. Children with special education needs shouldn't have to feel like a burden to the school system, but unfortunately that has become a reality here in Rhode Island. The system is broken and certainly not made to support those with learning differences, but instead blame, prolong, and make the situation worse for the child and all who are involved. School administrators show a huge lack of compassion and understanding towards students with special education needs. The long-lasting effect this has on a child's mental health and self-confidence is definitely not put into perspective. Children aren't given the voice that they deserve when it comes to their educational rights, and it's time to hold those involved accountable to ensure that all families get the education they feel is best for their children and their children's future. So again, thank you so much for hearing me, and I'm very in support of this bill.
Thank you. Representative Fenton Fung.
Good afternoon. Thank you so much for reaching out and testifying today. Based on the fact that you go to a lot of these meetings and whatnot, how would you describe some of the more successful interactions in these IEP meetings that you've had?
I would definitely say successful-wise, you see a lot of teachers that definitely want to take the initiative to help these students, but they're not really given the support from their higher-ups to be able to help them, and they're kind of stuck in between a rock and a hard place. So I would say the fact that teachers definitely do want to help the children is working its way towards being successful, but I feel they're definitely not given all of the resources that they should be to help the child have a successful educational journey.
I apologize. I didn't mean to cut you off there.
No, that's okay.
What would you say in these meetings would probably be one of your worst experiences, and how do you think an ombudsman would help that situation?
So honestly, I'm sorry. So I don't really attend the actual IEP meeting, so I'm just an admin assistant here. So I'll take down like basic information, and the parents will kind of share their story briefly with me, and then I'll hand it over to one of the advocates here. So I'm not exactly in the meetings. I don't have all those details, but I definitely hear a lot of the stories from the parents. Just not that end of how it all ends up working out.
Thank you so much for your input. Thank you again.
Thank you. Sorry I couldn't answer that.
Thank you. Are there any further questions for Kaylee? Well, you tried, so that was good. Thank you. Thank you very much for your testimony.
Thank you. Take care.
Thank you. Megan Almirand. Megan? Megan, please proceed.
Good afternoon.
You have 2 minutes. Please proceed.
Thank you. My name is Megan Admirand. My husband and I are the humble yet proud parents of 3 young children, 2 of whom are in the East Providence Public School District. A brief description of our story. My son is dyslexic. We have an educational advocate, and I, as his persistent parent, am facing retribution from the district. Families need an ombudsperson because it is not safe to question the districts or the administrators who serve them. Administrators retaliate not only on caregivers, but also on the children they made a commitment to educating. The people voting today need to understand this bill is a matter of safety, confidentiality, and support for families who have used all their resources and who can't approach administration without fear, doubt, or anger. Nobody is winning. We are all suffering as residents of Rhode Island, which, as documented, is the least educated state in New England, despite being sandwiched between 2 of the most educated states in the country. There are parents and guardians who could not testify out of fear of further retaliation on their families. They have been silenced by district and administrative leaders who bypass their responsibility to ensure each child's basic civil right to a free and appropriate public education. Every day in Rhode Island public schools, students with special learning needs are marginalized in continued acts of discrimination. Why should caregivers accept this? Why does anyone accept this?
30 seconds, please.
Families need a trusted advisor and counselor who will hold district and administrators accountable for denying any child their education. It's time to reset the standards and expectations in Rhode Island. It starts with approving this bill. Thank you so much for the time today.
Thank you. Are there any questions for Megan? Thank you very much for your testimony, Megan. Next, we have Paige Clarius Parks, Rhode Island Kids Count. Ms. Parks? Ms. Parks, please proceed. Welcome.
Hello. Thank you so much, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. Thank you for the opportunity to provide testimony today. Rhode Island Kids Count would like to voice its support for this bill. You've already heard really powerful testimonies from parents, so I will just add in today some data that demonstrates the need to improve educational services for students with disabilities. So in Rhode Island in 2019, only 6% of students in grades 3 to 8 with a disability met or exceeded expectations in ELA on the RICAS exam, and only 5% in math. This is compared to 44% in ELA and 34% in math among students without special education needs. I'm also going to highlight one more data point. That is a new data point that we just started reporting in last year's fact book around the new accountability system in Rhode Island. This is a system that gives star ratings for the schools throughout the state, and there's also data that's connected to the school report cards where they identify schools that are in need of targeted support and improvement. So these are schools that have 1 or more student subgroups performing at the lowest levels in the state. So in the 2018-19 school year, 158 schools throughout the state were identified as being in need of targeted support and improvement. That means every school district, with the exception of 5, had at least 1 school identified in this area. Of these 158 schools, 117 had 1 or more student subgroups who performed at the lowest level, and of those schools, 88% were identified because of the need for improvement for students with disabilities.
Hi, Paige. That's 30 seconds to go.
Yeah.
Great, and this is data that was before the pandemic. As we know, the pandemic is expected to cause great lost academic progress, especially for our students with disabilities. So we support any efforts that will help to improve educational services and also help parents be advocates for their own children. So thank you so much. That concludes my testimony.
Thank you, Paige. Any questions for Paige? Very good. Next, we have Megan Wagner, excuse me. Welcome, Megan. You have 2 minutes. Please proceed.
Hi, my name is Megan Wagner. I come from an urban district. I just wanted to address a couple of things that I see as beneficial within the ombudsman bill today. I'm a parent that has full understanding of IDA laws, least restrictive environment, and faith. With all that being set aside, I have a student who I have fought tirelessly for over the years. My son has been shuffled around from placement to placement in the most restrictive environment. I have reached out to RIPEN, who, although have been wonderful advocates for me, are limited in what they're available to do. I have also reached out to RIDE, who, although were fully aware of the situation, could only instruct me into mediation, which is dependent upon the school district to decide if they would like to participate. Beyond that was due process. Due process is lengthy. I did at one point reach out to a lawyer, the Rhode Island Disability Law Center, who basically told me at the point that I was at, where they were allowing my child to elope from the building, where they were not giving me 10-day prior notice to discuss placement, where they were calling the ambulance on my son and traumatizing him further. I was told that unless he could behave completely and 100% normal and typical, that it wouldn't look good and it wouldn't get far. Basically, I would be broke and it would be useless. My child has a mental health disability that was not identified and not supported. For most of his education, I fought for that IEP. And going forward, he continues to doubt himself because he has been excluded from his peers through the majority of his education.
That's 30
And
seconds. 30 seconds to go.
Yep. The ombudsman's office would be a wonderful thing because even with the knowledge that I have requested meeting minutes that have at times been inaccurate. And I have asked for them to be redacted, and I have questioned the things that they have written that even I have said, and they have not changed them.
Thank
This
you.
documentation would allow, at the end of the meeting, for it to be added into his file, things that I said in my writing. I think it would be wonderful for that to move forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions for this witness? Thank you. Jonathan Blank. Please proceed. You have 2 minutes, Jonathan.
Hi, my name is Jonathan Blake. I live in North Kingstown. I'm a father of an autistic child who's in a school system there. And I'll say my experience with our school system has been pretty good. I think they do a great job with my daughter. I will say that I support this bill, and for anything, the fact that the ombudsman or somebody there could attend these meetings as an advocate would help parents immensely. Like, we can go to RIPEN and get advocates from there, or we can pay advocates, but I don't think we should have to do that. I think if we had somebody there at a meeting where we're feeling overwhelmed, all these terms are being thrown at you, numbers, all this stuff, and if there's somebody who understood that stuff better there with us, I think it would help immensely. I think that also, there's also some potential for the school departments to perform evaluations on these kids and have an interest in, giving them a certain evaluation that would keep them maybe in district, vice out of district. Maybe it's a cost savings to the district to do that, and if there was some oversight with that, maybe some different questions could be asked by the ombudsman to make that determination as well. I just feel like the parents need somebody to be able to go to like this, that can go to our legislatures and also assist us in these meetings, because it's just, like I said, it can be pretty overwhelming. Also, I want to say...
That's 30 seconds. Warning, please.
Okay. I also want to say I appreciate what Representative Benton-Funk said about the families with children with autism. It's definitely like a nonstop train, and any help I think we could get in this regard would be great.
Wow. Well, thank you, Jonathan, and we appreciate your comments. And it's interesting, we're in a room in the basement of the State House, and there's one picture hanging up of Dr. Paul Sherlock, and the language that many of the parents have used in terms of restrictive settings, the language that is in our special ed law, the least restrictive setting, was implemented back in the 70s and championed by Dr. Paul Sherlock. So it's very, very difficult issues. Thank you for your testimony. The next witness, Yeah, oh, they put them up, good. Oh, great. Leah Gaspar. Welcome, please proceed.
I've thought about what I should say when I testify here today about why this bill is so important to me. Should I tell you about my child's IEP that wasn't followed countless times, or about the program she needed that she didn't get, or the staff that was never trained to work with her? Or should I tell you how my district failed to provide early literacy interventions, or how they failed to identify? Should I tell you after I went and had my child evaluated? Instead of wanting to provide services that would help a child with dyslexia, my district wanted to place my child in a self-contained class. My district answer for educating students with language-based learning disabilities was to stick them in the class with a teacher who isn't trained to teach students with dyslexia. Because I refused this placement, my daughter became the casualty of our disagreement. By third grade, her lack of education started causing serious problems. She became bullied by not only peers but by staff as well. She refused to go to school for 6 weeks. She began suffering from anxiety, but nothing could have prepared me for what was going to happen next. My little 9-year-old told me she didn't want to live anymore if school was going to be that hard. That memory will haunt me forever. What 9-year-old would say something like that? In 4th grade and again in 5th grade, the school admitted they couldn't educate her and offered an out-of-district placement. We went to the only schools in Rhode Island that specialized in dyslexia, Hamilton and St. Andrews. Neither school would accept my daughter because she was too far behind even their benchmarks, even if she stayed back a year. One of the administrators at the school told me that what had been done to my daughter was educational malpractice. My daughter's school psychologist said we were putting together her programming with spit and bubble gum, and it shows. My daughter is going into the high school year next year. She is 5 years behind functioning at a 4th grade level, even though she has the ability. She is bright, smart, and creative, and she's never going to reach her full potential. I ask you, how is that a free and appropriate public education? I have followed the procedures for disagreements, and they have failed us and caused financial and emotional hardship. This ombudsman office would hold schools accountable for what our children are entitled to under the law, identifying, providing evidence-based programs, and following IEPs. The office will collect valuable data that is needed. We can change the outcomes for these kids, but we need that now. Please support this bill.
Thank you. Good conclusion.
Thank you.
Perfect timing. Thank you very much. We appreciate your testimony. Is there any questions?
Thank you.
Yes. Representative Caldwell has a question.
Hi, I just have a comment. I want to thank you for coming on and sharing your story with us. I have a 9-year-old son right now who is in 3rd grade, and imagining what would have to happen to get him to the point that he would verbalize, what your child did is not something any family or child should have to go through. So I really want to thank you for sharing your story with us today.
Thank you. It was very emotional to say that, but I wanted it to be said.
Thank you very much for your testimony. We appreciate it. Next we have
thank you.
Sandra Paquette. One Voice for Child Advocacy Agency. Welcome, Sandra. Please proceed. You have 2 minutes.
Okay. Yes, my name is Sandra Paquette, and I am calling to say how strongly I support this bill. And I'm speaking as someone who's been involved with special education for over 40 years as a teacher, administrator, consultant, and currently as an advocate. What I wanted to say is that we have laws that have been in existence for quite a while. IDEA, we have state laws, which guarantee every child a free and appropriate public education. But these laws are just words on paper if they are not actually enforced. And currently, we have no means to guarantee that school departments are following these regulations. The school departments have no accountability at this point. Supposedly, the RIDE is the one who will oversee them, but they do not. And at this point in time, if a parent feels there is a problem, that their child is not receiving appropriate services, they have only 2 options. The first is mediation, which is an exercise in futility because it's the same people who were at the IEP meeting with the addition of a mediator with no authority. to make any decisions. So this is usually very unsuccessful. School departments are famous for saying to parents, well, you know, you can always go to a due process hearing.
That's 30 seconds to go.
Okay, yeah, this is so costly and it's complex, and most parents either fear this or will not do it. So we need this law. We need it to protect the most vulnerable population of children that we service.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sandra. Are there any questions for this witness? Thank you very much. Nicole Buca, parent. Welcome, Nicole. You have 2 minutes. Please proceed.
Thank you. Dear Mr. Chairman and committee members, thank you for this opportunity to speak in support of Bill 5833 for a special education ombudsman. My name is Nicole Bucca, and I am the parent of 2 children with disabilities, specifically autism spectrum disorders, in East Greenwich. IDEA is federal law. Law implies to parents like me that it's going to be enforced. Like a police officer's role is to enforce the law, when I first had concerns about my children's education, I asked other parents, who enforces IDEA? Rhode Island Department of Education, I was told. 12 years later, experience has shown me a different reality. Monitoring through RIDE, called a school support visit, happened once in the last 10 years in my children's school district. I'm not blaming RIDE. The people that do this work, these visits, they work hard, but their capacity is limited by too few FTEs. IDEA is law. Would you be okay if the police protection in your community only came around once every 10 years because they didn't have the personnel to do more? No, you wouldn't, and we shouldn't accept this as enforcement of IDEA either. As an East Greenwich Special Education Local Advisory Chair, CELAC, for 6 years, I can also attest that our school support visit didn't seek family or parent input at all. So the only information put in our school support visit, once in 10 years, was only an honor system of what the staff of themselves, the higher-ups at district, put in the report. So not surprisingly, it was glowing. I support this bill because it gives parents a voice. So back to the law enforcement metaphor, what if the police relied on an honor system?
That's a 30-second
Would that be okay with you?
30 seconds, please.
Yes. Even the name school support visit says it all. It isn't enforcement, it's support, which is fine. District leaders deserve support, and I think our state agency should be in that business. But who then? What agency then is in charge of enforcing IDEA in Rhode Island? Every day, not once every 10 years, and in every district, not just the ones that are needy. If IDEA is the law, then it is the law every day and for every child and every family.
That's 2 minutes.
To say that right, okay, thank you.
Thank you, Nicole. And Nicole, before you go, Representative Caldwell, do you have a...
Nicole, are you still there?
I am.
Oh, hi, Nicole. It's Justine. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. Thank you for your testimony. So, you know, I'm wondering, Representative Fenton-Fung mentioned something earlier, and I know she's absolutely right that for parents like you, this is really a full-time job. Even advocating for your child is a full-time job. And one of the reasons this ombudsman is so necessary, as you pointed out, I know in your written testimony that, you know, folks like you are able to do that at a great burden, but there's a lot of parents who cannot. I'm wondering if you can give us a sense of, you know, an example or a short narrative of, you know, the hoops that you had to jump through to get something for one of your boys that they were supposed to have by the school department. I know that's kind of putting you on the spot, so if not, that's okay, but I think it would be good for people to hear how much work goes into, you know, getting one thing that, you know, you're supposed to have by law, as you point out.
Yeah, okay, so I will start with, I think I'll start with the most recent, which is that I have a son on the spectrum, but he's high functioning, and because of the nature of the spectrum, he developed really clinical anxiety. And so he really needed mental health supports, and he really needed the school environment to be modified for him. So I had to, I'm going to try to summarize this as quickly as possible. Over the course of about 6 months, I must have had about 20 IEP meetings. I had to pay for an FBA, a functional behavioral assessment, on my own. I had to meet with several lawyers for consult. The school didn't know what to do. The director was unresponsive. I reached out to Ripon. Ripon was helpful, as the gentleman earlier said, to a degree, but once it became conflict, they really couldn't help anymore. I had to I had to get my son a neuropsych because the school district wasn't doing any kind of evaluation, so I had to do that through my health insurance and really push. I had to get my son on the Bradley wait list, which took 6 months. I had to get an HBTS clinician, which they have no staff because they're underpaid. Another reason I support this bill is because it'll bring up state issues. And then I had to file a state complaint because the director refused to look at the evaluation during the summer. I lost the state complaint. And then the following year, that trend continued. I went to mediation, and I currently am likely going to go to due process as well. That's just a summary. And now I have biweekly meetings with the IEP team every 2 weeks.
That's 30
to
seconds.
try to, oh, sorry,
right.
to basically try to do it myself. I have to do it myself, more or less.
Thank you very much, and geez, God bless you. It's a good thing you
And
have
that's
a lot
one of them.
You have a lot of energy, and you sound like you're well organized, and your children are very lucky to have a parent advocate like yourself, and we appreciate your testimony. Are there any further
Thank
questions?
you. And Chairperson, can I also point out, I just want to say one more thing. That's my easy child.
Oh.
My other child is nonverbal and intellectually disabled.
Oh,
So I only want to say that because I want you to understand how hard that is.
yep.
Thank you.
Representative Fenton-Fung?
I want to thank you again for testifying, because I know how difficult that is, especially when there are multiple children who have very different needs in different ways on that spectrum. I just want to point out to the committee, imagine this mom having to do this when they only speak Portuguese, or they only speak Spanish, or they only speak Cambodian. They're not going to get through the system. And I think there are thousands of kids in the system here who are being falling through the cracks because they don't have parents that can negotiate the system like she can. So I just want to put that in perspective and how much this is needed on a statewide level. So thank you.
Representative Fenton-Fung, can I actually totally validate you on that? My son, who's nonverbal, has a friend in his therapy group that is just like him, intellectually disabled, around the same age, but he's 200 pounds and he's black. My son is tiny and white. His mom doesn't speak English, and when I tell you the egregious things they experience as compared to me, I never knew the differences of how we were treated until I heard the things they have been through. And not only are things not translated for her, even when there's a translator present, the teams don't pause for the translator to actually translate. But even then, she's so overwhelmed, and because she's of her status in the country, she's afraid to follow through with any of her due process rights because she's fearful that DCYF or a government agency will take her nonverbal son from her. And you cannot convince her otherwise. She will not exercise her rights.
That's awful.
Thank you so much, yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye. Next, we have Amber Chamlin, Rhode Island Advocacy for Children. We have 4 more witnesses, if you try not to be redundant. Welcome, please proceed.
Good afternoon. My name is Amber, and I'm a parent from Exeter West Greenwich Regional School District. I wanted to talk to you today about the importance of House Bill 5833. I really believe that this bill is imperative for our children's educational success, as it provides the transparency that comes with a third party. I really want to tell you about my son, Jeffrey. He's a senior this year, and this kid is, when I tell you he's never been in trouble, it's not an exaggeration. His ultimate goal in life is to make his teachers, his parents, authority figures happy. He is an excellent student. He has a very high IQ. He's 143, and he reads just for the fun of it. He read War and Peace at 15 just because he wanted to.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, the kid is one of the best kids you could ever meet. Unfortunately, he's also battled severe social anxiety most of his life. He had a lot of medical issues as a child and an infant, and it just kind of caused a lot of anxiety throughout his life. When he was little, he attended Kingston Hill Academy, the charter school, up until 5th grade. He had an IEP there, and he did exceptionally well. His teachers, special education director, the administration were just fantastic at anticipating what his needs would be and kind of coming up with new and creative ways of meeting him where he was at. But when we realized, obviously, Kingston Hill only goes until 5th grade,
we have 30 seconds to go.
We decided to transfer him to his middle school. He went there where his IEP was denied. 504 was denied. When we asked him what we could do for him, they pulled him into the room and said, "You need to tell us what's wrong," and then laughed in his face. We were told that introducing to another student was an ability issue. We ended up pulling him from school and homeschooled him because we weren't getting the support.
Thank you very much for your testimony.
Thank you so much.
Any questions for this witness? Okay. Next, Cindy Olson, ARC, Association of Retarded Citizens. They still use that acronym. Yeah. It's interesting because in the law we changed.
Hello?
Hi, I just mentioned that you represent ARC. And I was saying in state law, several years ago, we eliminated the R word and we turned it into developmental disabilities everywhere in Rhode Island law. But it's kind of an outdated acronym. Welcome, Cindy, please proceed.
Thank you. And I'm here as a member of ARC. I'm not sure if I could say I'm a representative. Hello, I'm here to speak on the support of the bill 5833 as well as 5352. I support the bill because I'm a veteran of IEP committees. Though behind me, I want to share why I feel these are important. I've had the pleasure of supportive administrations as well as unsupportive confrontational administrations. I fought in court and won on an issue, only to be left with the same administration to deal with. Well, I won a battle. I learned the war continued and it's on their field and they have all the resources with no oversight and zero accountability. In one of my last rounds where I was focusing on correcting false information in school reports, I was informed by the school official that since the reports are not public, there is no accountability or even a call for correcting reports or making them accurate. True or not, what do you do with this position? The only reasonable choice I had as a parent is to look into homeschool, seek out private schools and supportive administrations and communities. I still miss the fantastic teachers and the other supportive staff who are also very sad of such outcomes, and that's all the choices I had. But there's no oversight and there's no other place or way to reach out that's not equivalent to asking a fox to watch over the hen house. This is a short call and triggers many traumatic memories for myself and others, and I applaud advocacy groups that are brave and the brave, committed parents that are courageous enough to reach out for a better future.
30-second
for the 49% of student population by seeking legislative changes to accommodate this. Their parents are highly motivated and often have the best specialists and current research and tools ready to share. So let's do this. There's a false belief that it's more cost-effective now to be supportive of students. What is a short-sighted? Students who learn differences are able to thrive with the best, and this is best financially and best for all in the long run. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Are there any questions for Cindy? Hearing none. Kendra Mendoza. Kendra? Kendra? Welcome, Kendra. You have 2 minutes. Please proceed.
Okay. Hi, my name is Kendra Mendoza. I reside in Providence, Rhode Island. I'm speaking on behalf of my son, Joshua Gamble, age 17, who currently attends Mount Pleasant High School, Birch's Academy. Joshua is diagnosed with a rare condition called L1-CAM. He was born with 97% CSF, 3% brain. He also has other conditions like eosinophilic esophagitis, cerebral palsy, failure to thrive, among other things that we generally sum up and describe as global developmental delays. I am asking the Education Committee to pass
Ombudsman Bill number 5833 and the Special Education Local Advisory Committee Bill number 5352. Joshua is fully dependent, however, very kind, sweet, and funny. Josh used to enjoy going to school to learn with his friends. At one point, he was the one-on-one, and they eventually changed it in his IEP to a small group. Since then, there has been no accountability on the school's part as far as even his basic of needs are concerned. I have many personal examples ranging from safety concerns, health risks, and basic of needs. One example is Joshua came home from school in the winter, soaked through his clothes, and feces up to his back. I inquired and had to push the school to get the answers to why they were so neglectful. The school took no direct responsibility, and no one was held accountable. They made unjustifiable excuses. IEPs are not being followed.
30 seconds coming up. Okay.
Okay, I'm asking that you pass both bills together so that it's a more efficient, positive relationship between the parent, student, and school overall. Keeping focus on the school and the child.
Thank you, Kendra.
Where it should be.
Thank you, Kendra. And Kendra, I would reach out to call RIPEN, Rhode Island Parents Network on Jefferson Boulevard, and maybe they can help you with your advocacy. Okay?
Okay, thank you. Should I put it in writing?
Absolutely,
And send it in?
Yes, that would be great, and I'm sure they will respond and help and maybe refer you to the Rhode Island Disabilities Law Center. Sounds to me like you have some very major concerns. Well, thank you very much for your testimony. And lastly, Tim Ryan, last witness. Tim, please proceed.
Yes.
You have 2 minutes. Welcome.
Thank you, Chairman McNamara. I'm Tim Ryan from the Rhode Island School Superintendents Association, and we're in opposition to this bill. It's hard listening to the comments of parents who've had bad experience through special education, this process. That's very unfortunate, and any time that happens, we feel that we haven't succeeded on our part. But I have to say, in more than 40 years in public education, I have not experienced that as a principal and as a superintendent working with families, that the IEP process, I have not found it to be an adversarial one. We work together for the best that we can do with our kids, and by and large, I recall very few cases where any hearings or disputes have gone that weren't settled at the local level. That's been my experience. But I think what we need to do is really look at the data. I think it's premature to jump into this. I think, as been said before, IDEA is clearly established, and this bill would duplicate that and I think complicate the process. Number two, the existence of another official, I think, would really disrupt the relationship, the positive relationships we have in many cases in the school systems with parents. And I think working with RIPEN and advocacy groups like that has been very constructive. And I'm concerned that the idea here is that you need an advocate and we have to pay private advocates to get this process done. I don't think that's the case.
Tim,
that's
that's
been my
30
experience.
seconds coming up.
Okay.
Right? So just to wrap up, I think we need to put this off and get right in here and look at the data. Look at the information we have on disputes, see how they've been settled, see what's out there still, and then I think a person made a very good comment. We need to look and see where complaints are being generated. I think there are very few coming from our lower income communities, and I think we need to do outreach through community agencies to look at why that is so. So once again, we're in opposition to this bill, and I think it's premature to go into this without looking at the data more completely. Thank you very much, and thank you for all who have testified.
Thank you very much. Any questions? Yes, Representative Fenton-Funk.
Tim, thanks so much for all you do. This is not meant as a criticism of you whatsoever, so thank you for being part of this here. I'm going to push back on you greatly. Okay, a lot of the IEPs that I've gone into with families are usually with children on the spectrum. I hear these stories, and I remember all the stories when I was in there. They're very similar experiences. What we're hearing is there is a gap with kids on the spectrum in families having positive experiences. Okay, I've seen it firsthand, and we're hearing it again tonight. And I will push back to you on the middle and lower income families. I don't think they know their rights. I don't think they were willing to step up, whether it's their immigration status, where they're not confident of their English, whether they just don't understand the 17 acronyms that are being thrown at them at once, okay? Because some of us on the committee here are scratching our hands. And this is not a criticism of you. This is a constructive criticism on the process. I am sure the sponsor, I'm a co-sponsor, we'll sit in a room with you, we'll sit in a room with Ride, we'll sit in a room with any parent who wants to, okay? But I want you to understand we're hearing the problems. Some of us have seen the problems firsthand, and especially in the families where English is not a native language, there is a gap, okay? And we can look at data, and we can also look at why we're not collecting some other data. So I look forward to working with you on this, but this is not a put this off. This is, if you have a parent of a kid with special needs right now, it is not wait 2, 3, 4 years, okay? Time's ticking for them too. So I want you to understand this is important, and we're not going to give up on this. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr.
If I could
Ryan.
respond, or
Representative Caldwell has a question.
Thank you. I just have to add my statements to Representative Fenton-Fungs that, and also in agreement with her that this is not about you in any way, that even I think referring to these as kind of unfortunate situations, you know, these are, you know, all day, every day, my life has been turned upside down for years, and my child who is 9, you know, doesn't want to live anymore because what is happening at school. That is not an unfortunate situation. That is something that shouldn't be happening to anyone ever, and it may be unfortunate for the school administrators that they have to go through it and it's happening, but this is a life-altering, all-day, everyday process that goes on for these families, and it rises to a level of more importance than I think some folks are thinking about. So, thank you.
If you would like to respond very briefly,
yes.
Tim, we've got
First of all, I do want to make it clear that I agree that families in low-income communities need to be informed of their rights and the due process. And I was saying that is a gap that we need to look at. I was not suggesting that people don't have problems there, number one. Number two, I do know from meeting with families and working with families with children on the spectrum that this is a very challenging and emotional, difficult thing. I am saying that my experience has in general been positive. It takes some time, quite a while, to work through, continually work together in progress monitoring, but I have seen success, and I do know that our special ed departments work very, very hard, and no question we could use more resources, more money, but I don't know that this is a quick fix on this, and I didn't mean in any way to imply that these are just unfortunate situations. These are traumatic to families, and I recognize that.
Thank you, Mr. Ryan. And with that, any further questions for Mr. Ryan? We have any written testimony?
We have plenty, Mr. Chairman, but
Phillips?
I'm going to go through it as quick as I can.
Okay.
We have Kids Count, Page Clausius Parks in favor, Rhode Island Governor's Commission on Disabilities, Mr. Cooper in favor, Decoding Dyslexia is in favor, but with an amendment. Chris Simonelli is in favor, Rhode Island Families Organized for Reform and Change and Empowerment is in favor, RISSA Tim Ryan is against, Kathleen Moderna is in favor, Nicole Buca is in favor, Ripon Sam Salganic is neutral but has an amendment, and Eric Croft is in favor. Allison and Christopher Macera is in favor, and then afterwards we got like 8 or 10 more that just came in.
Okay.
So I don't.
They'll be posted on our website.
On the front page.
Thank you, Representative Phillips, and that concludes the hearing on House Bill 5833. Just for the members of the committee, the next 2 bills we're going to hear is by Chairwoman Serpa. They have no witnesses. Then we will hear Representative Cortravan's bill. Then we will hear Representative Byers' bills. So just so you can plan your schedule. And with that, Madam Chair, Representative Serpa is... Madam Chair, welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. I think you'll be very pleased with me this evening. I have two very brief bills, and the legislative explanation at the back on the last page captured them both. Are we doing 30 first or 31, Chairman?
Whatever your pleasure is, Madam Chair. How about 30 first, and then we'll proceed.
Okay. 5830, Senator Raptakis has the companion bill in the Senate. And we actually had a problem locally, not this past election, but a couple of elections ago. This would prohibit anyone seeking elected office at the city or town level from using the listserv that a school department developed to inform the parents and students of anything going on in the schools. It would prevent any candidate from using that developed listservs to promote his or her own candidacy, to invite them to a fundraiser, or to seek contributions to that campaign. And if the person is discovered having violated this law, he or she would be fined not more than $50. And we actually did have an issue with that locally. As I said, I believe it was 4 years ago.
I remember that a few years ago, yeah.
Yes, it actually did happen. The person was already serving on the school committee, and that person was seeking re-election and sought to get campaign contributions and promote his re-election on school software, which we thought was totally inappropriate. So, how do you do this, Chairman? Do you hear both
yes.
bills first?
All right. Are there any questions for Chairwoman Serper on 5830? Hearing none, there are no witnesses. Is there any written testimony? There is none.
I don't think so.
So that concludes the hearing on 5830. Madam Chair, how about 5831?
Yes, this is just a piece of enabling legislation. We thought that on September 11th, in all grades of our public schools, the teachers in charge of that classroom, whatever they do, the salute to the flag and listen to notices, they could hold a brief moment of silence, if they want to, in memory of the tragic events of 9/11/01. It's just a piece of enabling legislation. We're not requiring it or mandating it. And that's it for that one, Chairman.
Well, thank you very much. And there's no written testimony
No written
submitted.
testimony
That's very
again.
straightforward, and certainly you're a very good role model for the rest of the bills that we're going to hear tonight.
I told you you'd be pleased with me, Chairman.
That concludes the hearing on 5831. And the next bill we're going to hear is by Representative Cortravin, 5352.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Please
and
proceed.
committee members. I will try to be brief. I don't know if I'll be quite as brief as Chairwoman Serpa, but I'll try. So I'm here to introduce H5352. And this bill, if we chose to pass it, would take the regulations, the ride regulations for the CLAC committees that we heard some talk about in Rep. Carson's bill, and it would put those into statute. And the reason why I'm moving this forward is in conversations like many of us have had over the past year or so with parents of special needs, it's become really clear to me that while some school districts have great CLACs that are very active, there are some that it's not the same, and it's not the same from district to district. So I was looking for a way to try to equalize this to make sure that every district has an active CLAC. And so that's the rationale behind it. And
so Representative Cortravin,
one difference that from what's not in Rep. Carson's bill, there's a couple additions in what I'm proposing, which would be that that they comply with the Open Meetings Act for transparency's sake, and that they would actually report back to the school committees on an annual basis. As somebody that served on a school committee, I would go to, from time to time, attend a CLAC meeting, but we did not hear back from the CLAC meetings, and that communication, I think, from the CLACs to the school committees is pretty important piece of addressing the real need or the real reason for the CLACs, which is to say what things are not going right in terms of for parents, as I understand the regulation.
So my question to you, Representative Cordovin, is
yes.
When did special ed advisory committees become special ed legislative advisory committees? Because I know
local advisory committees.
Oh, it's local advisory committees.
Yeah.
Because I know going back, probably 40 years, that local community, there was the special ed advisory committee was made up of parents and advocates, and I always thought that having attended a few of those meetings and in an urban area, I was always very pleased with the representation of the parents and the advocacy and the leadership and the way they addressed issues with the school committee. Do you feel as though they're dysfunctional now, or what is the major point?
I think some are good. I know in Portsmouth, it would kind of vary from year to year how active they were, depending on which parents were involved. Their main thing was doing an awards assembly for the students and families. Not so much, like we did not hear from the members of the CLAC. I think having that report on an annual basis would show, would be valuable to the school committee, and that did not happen. And and I've talked to people from other districts where the CLACs are not, for whatever reason, are not really engaged. And one thing RIPEN put in their comments in favor of the bill, but a recommendation which I support, which would be to have these meetings continued on Zoom once we get out of the pandemic, because that has allowed for a lot of parents to participate. And I think that's one of the challenges with getting
All right,
parents.
well, we have a lot of witnesses on this, so are there any questions for Representative Cortovan? Yeah, I mean...
I know.
Yep.
Thank you, Representative Cortfriend, for bringing this forward. It's funny because my constituent who testified earlier was the head of our CLAC in East Greenwich for a while. And I think, we are one of the communities that does have a very high-functioning CLAC that gets involved. And one of their I think, peeves sometimes is that they don't really... Of course, they don't have a formal role on the school committee, and so they feel like they do a lot of this work and they bring all this information to the school committees, and of course, then depending on your school committee, it's how much of that gets taken seriously and implemented. So I don't know if we can put anything in a bill that would remedy that, but that is, I think that you're right about some of the problems, but I think there are others that could also be remedied, and that would be one that I would suggest. Thank you.
Okay, and we have several witnesses. There is no opposition. So with that, everyone will get 2 minutes, and please try not to be redundant. If someone else has already stated a fact addressing the bill, do not repeat it. First witness is Mr. Robert Marshall, Rhode Island Developmental Disabilities Council. Mr. Marshall, welcome, and please proceed. Welcome, Mr. Marshall. Please proceed.
Thank you, Chairman McNamara. I'm pleased to appear on behalf of the Rhode Island Developmental Disabilities Council on this bill. We took a look at this. This does vary drastically from district to district, and we think that codifying it will help give parents a place to bring their inputs. We did have one suggestion to the sponsor that I talked to her about yesterday, and that is that we just expand the required positions on it to include either a current special ed high school student or an alumnus. so that we can have a first-hand perspective on these committees, which I think will be helpful. And with that, we urge the committee to take a serious look at the bill, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Marshall? Thank you, Mr. Marshall. We appreciate your testimony. Kathleen Madeira. Welcome, Kathleen. Please proceed. Kathleen? Welcome, Kathleen. Please proceed. You have 2 minutes.
Hello. My name is Heather Kennedy. I am a current... Hi.
Okay, please proceed.
Okay. I am a current CLAC chair for Foster, Gloucester, and North Situate. I am not in support or against this bill. I think it needs a lot more discussion, especially in regards to understanding what the current challenges are with CLACs, why some communities are doing well or not. I don't think the law really reflects that part of it. I think this is something that does need to be discussed and addressed, and I think that there needs to be further investigation, especially with stakeholders like myself, asking other CLACs what is or is not working and how they feel about this bill. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much for your testimony. Are there any questions for Ms. Kennedy? Thank you. Samuel Silagnik? Oh, Kathleen. I'm sorry. Kathleen, please proceed. Welcome, Kathleen. Please proceed.
Good afternoon. Again, my name is Kathleen Mazzara. I'm a mom to 2 boys in Newport. We moved back to Newport in December of 2020, and at the time, our Tiverton IEPs had been expired, and Newport, by law, had to follow them, which they failed to do. And when we had our IEP meeting in January, there was no general education teacher on the call, which is against IEP mandates, and the meeting shouldn't have continued for those 20 minutes that there was no general ed teacher available. When I disagreed with the fact that ESY was not included in my children's IEP, I was told the data did not support the need for ESY, even though my children had now at this point missed 3 months of school. And nothing was done to make up for those hours. I was told we would have a para in our home from looking upwards, to which I've now been told the para is actually not able to work in our home, only from school. So any help that I was offered never came. My children have now been in school learning for the past about 3 weeks, and in that short amount of time, there has been multiple issues of my child not being given his Ritalin for 7 school days, and also not eating Monday through Thursday unless pizza is offered on Friday, and no notice made to me to let me know that my child hadn't eaten all those days.
That's 30 seconds.
Thank you.
Go.
I just would appreciate if we would have an office that ensures our children would have their fair, appropriate public education. Because when you turn to ride, you have no option.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, guys. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Next, we have, from RIPEN, I think they testified earlier. Are they on this as well? I think Sam...
He did, yeah.
Hello, Sam? Hi, Sam. Welcome. Please proceed. Try to be brief.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much. You heard from me earlier, so you know what RIPEN does. We also have a role supporting CLACs, and we convene twice annual meetings of Black leaders from across the state. We're very supportive of this bill. We want to thank Representative Corcoran for her attention to it. I was going to just share one story of something that a CLAC did that I loved. They helped a district create an alternative school picture day. I don't know if some of you remember School Picture Day, but it's very exciting. There's also lots of waiting in line and lots of anxiety for some kids, and there were a lot of students with special needs who were having trouble with that. The CLAC brought that to the district's attention. They created an alternative picture day, and those kinds of little things are really made possible when CLACs are working well. We agree with Representative Corcoran that it's very uneven across the state, across different districts. She mentioned our concern about the Open Meetings Act. I just want to repeat that. My understanding is that with the COVID emergency rules, open meetings can happen by Zoom, but that once those emergency rules are over, it's either impossible or very difficult to have meetings by Zoom that comply with the Open Meetings Act. And we've seen great success with these virtual meetings, so we wouldn't want anything to stand in the way of those continuing after the pandemic. Thank you very, very much for your time. If you have any questions, I'm here.
Thank you very much. Next, we have Jonathan Blank.
Thank you very, very much.
Welcome, Jonathan. Please proceed.
Hello, my name is Jonathan Blank. I'm a North Kingstown resident. I just spoke for the 5833 bill, and so I'm speaking for this one as well. I think the purpose of this bill is to, from reading it, is to make it law that each town have a CLAC, because it's already a ride regulation, and I guess that's not a law. That's how I'm perceiving this. But I want to say that I do think it should be something that is required in every state. I'm on my town's CLAC. It has helped me immensely. We've helped other parents in our town. I think in the last bill, 5833's discussion, there was talk about getting the word out about RIPEN. I think the CLACs can really help with that. The RIPEN provides the training for the CLACs, and I just think it's a good bill in general, and I support it.
Okay. Thank you very much, Jonathan. Any questions for Jonathan? Have a nice evening. Thank you. Leah Gaspar? Leah? Leah? All set? Please proceed. No? Okay, Kendra Mendoza. Kendra? Walt, is he the last one? Who's this, Walt?
Yes, it is.
Walt, welcome. Please proceed. You have 2 minutes.
Yes, thank you. Hi, my name is Walt Steenbergen. I'm from Woonsocket, Rhode Island. My rep is Steve Lima, and I am speaking in support of the CLAC bill written by Representative Corcoran. As you heard from our earlier testimony, we feel that there are issues of special education in Rhode Island, and the CLAC bill would permit parents as well as the teachers, the professionals, and the administrations to actually have a much more open line of communication in discussing issues that are going on, and also allowing them to access some of the state resources that are available and the knowledge that is available to everyone through IDEA, and making the educational journey for special needs students just that more powerful and meaningful.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions for this witness? That is the last witness, correct? Do we have any written testimony? Is there any written testimony over there? Do you have written testimony? Is it for 5352. Yep. And Representative Kislak, who's the written testimony
Yes.
from today?
Thank you, Chairman. We have written testimony from the Association of the Rhode Island Administrators of Special Education, a raise against the bill from Renee Smith, a Coventry parent, 4. Kathleen Madera, a parent from Newport, 4. The Rhode Island Parent Information Network, Sam Salganic, pro. Rhode Island Developmental Disabilities Council, Bob Marshall, suggests an amendment and is in favor. Lynn Bouvier Cabiscus is the chair of the Woonsocket Special Ed Advisory Committee, against. Caitlin Kingman, 4. Heather Kennedy, 4. Neutral. Nancy, 4. And Martha Costa, 4.
Okay. Thank you very much, Representative Kislak. We appreciate that, and that concludes the hearing on 5352. And the next...
Thank you, Chairman.
Our pleasure. Have a nice evening. The next bill that we're going to hear is by Representative Bia. And then
Mr. Chairman.
Representative Bia, welcome and please proceed.
Mr. Chairman, I'm here to present Bill 5826. Yeah, we'll start with 5826.
Yeah, that's good. That's 5826.
Yep. All right, now 5826, Mr. Chairman and member of the committee, it's basically in relation to the Rhode Island Promise Scholarship. And this bill, what this bill does is it allows students who are legally unable to complete the FAFSA process just to complete a different comparable form from CCRI. I've been in communication with the president of CCRI, and she's excited about this process, about this bill, that those kids that are legally unable to complete the FAFSA application will complete that special form that CCRI will create, and automatically they head over to CCRI. That's the intent of this bill.
Okay. Very good. So, Representative Bia, you've worked it out with CCRI, and they are in support of this?
They are definitely in support of this.
Okay. And we have no testimony. Does anyone have a question for Representative Bia? Mr. Chair. Okay. Why don't we, do we have any, Representative Kislak?
Yes, I just wanted to thank you, Representative Bia, for bringing this forward. I think it's important to include all of our students, so thank you.
Yes. Representative Giraldo.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just really wanted to also take a second to echo what Rep. Kislak just said. Thank you, Rep. Bia, for putting this forward. This is definitely going to help people in my community and across the state, so thank you.
Very good. Do we have any written testimony?
5826?
Yes.
5826, we only have one written testimony. That's from Jordan Goyette, who is in favor of the bill.
Very good. That concludes the hearing on 5826. Representative Bia, why don't we move on to 5829? Certainly a bill that is very relevant today. Please proceed.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Again, 5829, based on the population of students that we have in our state, most especially throughout the state anyways, but more prevalently in Providence, Woonsocket, Central Falls, Pawtucket, that we do have a lot of students that have like our ESL population. But one of the things that we lack in the state, we have like limited amount of teachers that have those endorsements to teach those students. So what this bill does is helped the reciprocity process from Massachusetts to Rhode Island. So all of the were cert and endorsement of teachers from Massachusetts, from Rhode Island, that we can have the reciprocity process in Rhode Island also. That includes the shelter English immersion endorsement that is in Massachusetts. Currently, in Rhode Island, we accept most of the certificate from Massachusetts, but we don't accept the SEI, which is the Sheltered English Immersion. And that is that also limit the amount of teachers that have those cert currently in Rhode Island, but they're not allowed to use those cert.
What's that?
So this is why this bill entails that all of the cert from Massachusetts and Rhode Island, the reciprocity process includes the SEI endorsement. That we expand the feeds of teachers in Rhode Island that has an endorsement to teach our ESL kids, our multilingual learner students.
Yep. And Representative Bayer, we looked into that too. Mr. Connell, did you research that, the Massachusetts?
Yes, Chair. We had several conversations with the director of the licensure in Massachusetts, and we have some background information on it. It's right now Mass does not do the licensure, but they have like a process, and we have a lot of information on what they do and how they do it, and we have some ideas to we could. This is obviously this is an idea to try and have RIDE to look into it and model their program, and we have a lot of information on how Mass did their program and what we might have to do to model it and try and get reciprocity.
So would this help, Representative Bayer, with the current situation with the ELL certification of Providence teachers?
Yeah, so because currently the reason why I brought this bill, I have a teacher currently in my building who graduated about 4 years ago from Massachusetts, and she does have the endorsement of her sheltered English immersion. And in Massachusetts, she was able to teach our multilingual learners in Massachusetts. However, in Rhode Island, currently in my building, RIDE does not accept that sheltered English immersion endorsement.
Got it.
So, and this is one of the main reasons that I brought this bill. Because if she just crossed the border, she can teach those the population. But when she turned back on 95 North, she can't teach in Rhode Island because of that endorsement.
Got it.
So, so that's one of my intents. What I brought this bill. And she also did send a written testimony. That's Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Thank you, Representative Bayer. Mr. Connell.
Yeah, Chair, I didn't want to misspeak. We're saying Mass doesn't give reciprocity, but Rhode Island, this bill would allow, like the Rhode Island Department of Ed, we could give reciprocity to the Mass SEI endorsement.
Right, that's what the intent. Right. Very good. Right. Are there any questions for Representative Bayer? Thank you, Representative. Page Claudius Parks. Rhode Island Kids Count. Welcome, Paige.
Hi, thank you, Chairman. Thank you, members of the committee. Rhode Island Kids Count would like to voice our support for this bill, 5829. I'll keep my comments brief, but I know this committee is very well aware of the disparities in academic outcomes by language status. For our multilingual learners in Rhode Island, there's large disparities in math proficiency and ELA proficiency, especially for our third graders. I put a chart in our testimony that shows that disparity there. This data just shows us, of course, that our multilingual learners need additional supports to achieve proficiency, and part of those supports that they need includes having highly qualified educators who are trained to meet their learning needs. A financial analysis of the Providence Public Schools completed by Ernst & Young suggested a number and a great need for more ESL certified teachers to meet the Department of Justice guidelines. In their sampling of 5 elementary schools, Ernst & Young estimated up to 50 additional ESL certified teachers are needed. in October of 2018, just 3% of our public school educators or instructional coordinators held an active bilingual dual language or ESL certification. So we support efforts that will increase children's access to high-quality dual language programs and increase the capacity of the educators to serve them. And that will conclude my testimony. Thank you.
Thank you, Paige. Any questions for Paige? Thank you very much. Aaron Papa? Welcome, Aaron. Please proceed.
Hello, Chair McNamara and members of the committee. Thank you so much for allowing me to provide testimony today. My name is Erin Papa, and I direct the Coalition for Multilingual Rhode Island and also work at Rhode Island College. And I'm a resident of Providence and have worked for many years kind of alongside multilingual populations in our state. And I'm here to support the bill 5829. At least the intent of the bill. I think we, as Paige just said in her testimony, that we have great need in this area in terms of having teachers.
Yes? Aaron? Did we lose Aaron? Aaron?
Hello?
Yes, please proceed.
Oh, I apologize. I don't know where I got cut off, but I'm here to support this and to just say that we have great needs in this area.
Yep.
And not only in terms of teachers working with multilingual learners, but administrators and in all levels of the building. I would just urge Representative Villa to add to this not only ESL certification, but also include in the bill provisions that would include bilingual dual language educator certification, since we know that when we can maintain home languages and further develop them in our schools, students will actually have higher proficiency in English and have many other benefits that come along with that.
Thank you, Aaron.
Cultural benefits, academic, cognitive, all sorts of benefits. So
Thank
we
you.
ask that, the state do what it can to support preparing more teachers of multilingual learners. Thank you.
Thank you, Aaron. Any questions for Aaron? Enrique Sanchez. Welcome, Enrique. Please proceed.
Hey, how you doing, sir?
Excellent. Thank you. Please proceed.
Okay, thank you so much. Hey, my name is Enrique Sanchez. I am here in support of House Bill 5829. I am here representing the BLM RI PAC, and I'm here representing Providence DSA, Democratic Socialists of America. Thank you so much to the committee for presenting this very, very, very important bill so that we could, benefit young educators of color, working class educators can benefit from this very important bill that mandates RIDE to provide ESL, easier accessible ESL certifications and ELL teaching certifications for young people of color. There's a lot of rhetoric, right, that RIDE wants to, and the Providence public school system wants to, recruit, retain, hire educators of color, but they make it very inaccessible. There's not a lot of funding for support for young teachers of color trying to pursue an ESL, ELL, or any other certification. They're very expensive, ranging from $5,000 to $10,000. Not here pointing fingers at anyone or anything, but at the end of the day, there has to be more support from RIDE to young educators of color. I myself, being a Brown educator, substitute teacher, working at three different high schools now, under Representative Villa at Alvarez, working at Mount Pleasant, and then working at the Juanita Sanchez complex now, where I'm currently a substitute teacher there as well. I'm trying to figure out my options here. I want to help our kids be involved with our Black and Brown students, but I need some more support financially from RIDE because I do want to stay in the system, the school system.
That is 2 minutes.
But there needs to be more support.
Okay.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much,
Hey,
Committee. I appreciate it.
Enrique, thank you very much. We appreciate your testimony. Are there any questions for Enrique? Thank you. David Velez, please. Welcome, David.
Thank you. Good evening, Chairperson and committee members. I'm glad to be with you. My name is David Velez. I am the director of the Rhode Island Interfaith Coalition to Reduce Poverty, a coalition of faith leaders around Rhode Island, faith institutions, clergy, community advocates, and community residents that believe that we have a moral obligation to fight poverty and inequality. I'm here tonight to support this bill for the simple fact that we need more ESL teachers. I've been an advocate for a very long time, and I work and live in communities that are impacted by this bill. We have seen the number of students, multi-language learners, or ESL students, raise almost about 100% in the last 10 years. We've all seen it in the news in our schools. There's an increase of multi-language learners in our schools, so we need more teachers to fill that gap. We as a coalition understand that education is intricately linked with poverty. Not only is education impacted by poverty, but poverty is impacted by education, right? It's a cycle that perpetuates poverty. And so we need, right now in Rhode Island, we're failing a lot of the students who are English learners, and we need more resources and programs like more ESL teachers to help keep those students on track so that they could have academic achievement and also stop generational poverty that they're experiencing. So thank you for your time. Thank you for letting me speak, and I hope you have a blessed day.
Very good, David. Thank you very much. We really appreciate your testimony. And there are no questions. Next and last witness is Mr. James Parisi, Rhode Island Federation of Teachers and Healthcare Professionals. Please proceed, Mr. Parisi.
Thank you, Chair, and good afternoon, committee members. The Rhode Island Federation of Teachers and Health Professionals is supportive of Representative Bia's bill. We have existing challenges in many districts, not just Providence, related to increased need to help teachers obtain either an endorsement or a certificate to teach ELLs. The bill provides for reciprocity, and as your council just made reference to, it's not really reciprocity because Mass doesn't always recognize Rhode Island certificates. I think they want our candidates to pay for their tests, but that's another story for another day. The SEI endorsement that the sponsor mentioned requires taking one course, where the current Rhode Island endorsements require taking 3 courses at RIC. We certainly believe it's worth a look to compare the two and maybe come up with a streamlined way where Rhode Island teachers can get endorsements, and the certificate's another thing. It requires more coursework, but it's certainly an issue that we care about. We're particularly supportive of the language around creating cohorts in districts and providing opportunities for teachers to get these endorsements in schools. We've done that in the past. We've done that in the past when we implemented middle schools, where we would create college-level courses in school districts with groups of teachers. We think that's the way to go if there's a district-wide or a statewide initiative to get more ELL certified or more ELL endorsed teachers. Finally, while it's beyond the purview of this committee, we'd also support a line item in the budget to subsidize teachers who are asked to obtain the ELL endorsement. Thank you very much for your attention.
Yeah, good idea. That's great. Yeah. Are there any questions for Mr. Parisi? Thank you very much. And we have written testimony in support.
Just 2 pieces of written testimony, Chairman. One from Kids Count, Paige Clausius Parks, in favor, and Elizabeth Roy, who is just a teacher, and she is also in favor.
Great. Very good. And next we have Representative Alzate, who's been very patient tonight, waiting, and she has House Bill 5828. Representative Alzate, welcome, and please proceed.
Thank you, Chairman. So my House resolution is just asking to extend my commission on studying how we can get more teachers of color into our education system. Last year we started it in January and we were only able to get to March. I actually think that our last meeting was the last day of session because the pandemic hit. And so we really weren't able to get down into, what I would call like the nitty gritty of our issue. And so I just want to extend it so that I can continue to have the meetings and, possibly give a really great, robust report that we can work from. I'll take any questions.
Are there any questions for Representative Alzate? Representative Alzate, do you have a bill that you also submitted that would increase the number of minority educators in the state of Rhode Island? Do you have a bill beside this?
I believe I put that bill in last year, so I put it in this year again. I have to take a look. But yeah, so it's kind of mirrored off of the same work that Connecticut did.
Yes, very good.
Yeah.
Are there any questions for Representative Giraldo?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Not really a question, but Rep. Alzate, good friend of mine, I really appreciate, I remember when you put this commission together, and I'm just really excited about the commission, the work that they're doing, and the product that will come out of it. So thank you for pushing this forward. This is critical in the field of education, and I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Very good. And we do have one witness, Paige. And if we could get Paige. Hi, Paige. Welcome back.
Are you sick of me yet?
5828, and then please keep Paige on because we'll go right into the next bill.
Oh, excellent. So we just wanted to voice our support for House Bill 5828. This is really important legislation that the committee is working on to figure out how we can increase the diversity of our educator workforce. We really want to thank Representative Alzate for her leadership and to the members of the commission for their work on this critical issue. The data is very clear that we have an increasingly diverse student population. In 2018, 43% of our students were students of color, but 89% of our educators identified as white. And we know that educators of color benefit all students, especially as students of color. So we support this bill, and we're looking forward to continuing to follow the commission's work. Thank you.
Thank you. And if you could just stay on, Paige. We'll go.
Absolutely.
And do we have any written testimony in support, Representative 5828, Representative Phillips?
Yes, we do, and it's by kids count. Paige Clausius-Potts is in favor of it.
She's our best student. She got an A+ for tonight's
She's
hearing.
just on
Paige.
top of everything,
You
Chairman.
are, really. Okay.
Chairman, can I make a comment?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Representative Amore.
Late last night in the Finance Committee, Chairwoman Williams presented a bill that took much of what Chairwoman Alzate's commission had done already in its work on behalf of increasing the number of teachers of color, and presented that in a bill to the Finance Committee last night. So for those that think that the work of these working groups, commissions, is in some way not dealing directly with the issue, well, last night we saw legislation presented that deals directly with the issue, and much of which came directly out of the commission's discussions last year. So I want to thank Rep. Alzate for that. Thank you, Chairman.
Very good. Thank you, Representative Amore. And Representative Alzate, thank you for your work. And obviously, it's moving things forward and progressing in a very positive direction, even though your committee isn't even complete yet. So that's fruit of your labor. Very good. That concludes the hearing on House Bill 5828. And the next bill that we're going to hear is House Bill 5827, an act relating to school committees and superintendents. This act would require the Department of Education, in coordination with the Attorney General, to collect published data concerning school resource officers in each district, including the use of force against students, arrests, referrals to law enforcement and courts. And we do have support for this program, resource officers, in our budget. And I believe that we need data that, supports and gives us some insight into what's going on in the schools. With that, are there any questions from me? And we have two witnesses. Paige? Is Paige still on?
Yes, I am here.
Yeah, welcome back, Paige. Could you just briefly describe your testimony for this bill?
Absolutely. Well, thank you, Chairman, for introducing this important legislation. We are in strong support. School climate is a character of the quality of life in a school building. It's defined by many indicators that include discipline policies and academic outcomes. SROs can serve many functions in a school, and that includes the enforcement of student discipline. Currently, Rhode Island relies on federally generated data to report school-related arrests and student referrals to law enforcement. And this data is collected at inconsistent time intervals by the U.S. Department of Education, their Office of Civil Rights. And the survey topics can be subject to change depending on the administration. And this data and the implications of this data are just far too important for us to rely on federal collections. And we need to have our own annual collection and reporting system so that we can see the impact of our education reform efforts. My testimony highlights Rhode Island's data that we have currently around school-related arrests. And this data shows that there is large disparities in students who are referred to law enforcement or arrested based on race, ethnicity, and language status and disability or IEP status. And the implications for this are quite grave. Student arrests and juvenile detention will increase a student's likelihood of future arrest, decrease their likelihood of completing high school, and may result in long-lasting consequences, including restricted eligibility for federal grants and student loans, and barriers to college enrollment and employment. And we strongly support efforts to collect this annual data so that we can be informed when making policies around ending the practice of arresting and referring students to law enforcement for nonviolent offenses. I want to conclude by thanking this Assembly, the General Assembly. It's because of your actions that Rhode Island is now recognized as a national leader in our annual collection of reporting of student suspensions data and the requirement for that data to be disaggregated. Rhode Island Department of Education, their data websites are also nationally recognized for how they publicly report the discipline disparities. And this proposed bill would expand this legislation to include the acts of law enforcement, and it utilizes existing tools to collect this important data. So thank you, Chairman, again, for introducing this legislation, and I am very happy to take any questions.
Any questions for Paige? Thank you, Paige. Next witness.
Yes, sir. Mr. Chairman, I just have...
Yes, Representative Byer.
I think one question thus far. Hi, Paige, how you doing? Thank you for thank you for that info. But I just want just a quick clarification on the data that you're speaking about. Does the data tells you exactly from like SRO or how many arrests was made by SRO or the beat cops?
Let me get it back on the phone.
Or they just put everything in lumps and just say SRO because there's a difference.
I believe it's SRO offices that, I believe that's the intent of the data, I think. But unfortunately, Representative by Paige, we lost Paige on the connection.
All right, because that is a very important piece of
right, because it could be someone on the campus. It could be okay. Representative Bea, could you just repeat your question, Paige? Paige, did you hear the question?
I heard part of it. I believe the question is this data connected to the SROs in schools?
Yes,
Is that the question?
correct.
The question is, does the data breaks down when you, because you said the arrest made by SROs within school, right? Am I right?
Correct. This is the number of school-related arrests and referrals. You're correct in that it is unclear if these, I think the assumption is that the arrests are made by a school resource officer, but you're right, we don't know that. That's one of the reasons why we need better data collection. We also need to know, like, what were the reasons for these arrest referrals, who made those arrests, were they resource officers or were they called in from a municipal law enforcement agency? I think that's an excellent question, and exactly why we need more data to completely understand the picture of what's happening.
Thank you.
Okay. Any further? Representative Giraldo.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I also have a question. It may be for the caller, it may be for you, but I'm just wondering if anyone knows of any statewide opportunity or survey that goes out to gather student perception of SROs and the work that they do. I know it's not directly correlated to this information here, but it has me thinking about how students perceive the SROs in their schools and how that may differ from school to school. And I'd love to know if there's anything that currently exists about student perception of the SROs in the schools.
I think some of the student advocacy groups over the years, Representative Giraldo, have mentioned they have perceptions of these officers in the schools, and they've expressed occasionally some concerns relating to that.
And so I've seen that, and I know that I believe that the experience with SROs in Central Falls has been a little bit different, and that's why I'd love to see if there's any sort of data where we can compare why is it perceived one way in a school versus a different way in another school.
I think a lot depends on the officer that is in the school and the match. Representative Beal?
Yes, and Representative Giraldo, thank you for that info. It varies from school to school, and just based on the individual, or from district to district also.
Right.
Because I do have, I know there's also a student group that voiced in that opinion that they don't want SROs. At the same time, when you break that down into buildings to buildings, right? So I do have a focus group of students that actually how it encourage SRO to stay within the building because of the relationship that they have built with the SRO, because of the relationship the SRO have built with families within the school. So it's kind of varies from building to building, and I think those are some of the quantitative data that we probably need to collect sometimes with our focus group. I think that's a good inquiry that you ask it. And what I would try to do for you is when I have my focus group with my students, I would try to collect some data points, and we're going to discuss that further.
Thank you, Representative. Very good. Thank you, Representative Giraldo, Representative Bayer. Are there any further questions?
I have just one.
Yes, Representative Phillips.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm just rereading the section that you're adding to it, and it's a little bit broad. And the only question I have is, are we going to narrow the report to anything that is on school properties? Because I know in the past, this year is with COVID, it's been very much relaxed and no arrests that I know of in our school system. But sometimes the tensions happen on the school properties and they spill out onto public property or private property outside of the school district. If the resource officer is called because it's right outside the school district, will this report encompass that also?
I think it's something that we'll have to narrow down and work on. Yeah, we're going to have to work on that. And Representative Bia, I think have the same thing, because when you have an urban campus, there's people outsiders that come onto the campus. There's all sorts of, and sometimes you have a separate detail for dismissal. Representative Norrie?
Thank you, Chairman. Sorry to belabor this, but as well as resource officers tied up with an incident from earlier, and now you're calling an officer off the beat to handle that second incident, right? Again, officer has a day off, officer's out sick. Again, all incidents are going to be taken by the beat car. I know in my town there's no fill-in for an SRO, so there's no backup. They're not replaced that day at the school.
Right.
So again, those incidents as well are going to be documented differently in this report, and those are things that you're going to have to probably have a checkbox as to the location of the incident versus whether it was the SRO who handled it or the school or both, right? To cover both of those, it's going to encompass a lot of information.
And Representative McNamara, sometimes people don't realize, even for example, like in Pawtucket during the day, the shift during school in the city, there's 8 offices to cover the city of Pawtucket. So you have 2 major high schools, 3 junior highs. So there's a lot, and 16 schools. So it's a pretty big system and a lot of work. So point well taken. So we'll have to desegregate that data. Very good. Hannah Stern, is she waiting patiently? Is Hannah Stern on? Hi, welcome, Hannah. Please proceed.
Hi, thank you, Chairman and members of the committee, for your time this evening, and thank you, Chairman McNamara, for your introduction of this really important legislation. My name is Hannah Stern. I'm testifying on behalf of the ACLU of Rhode Island in strong support of this bill. This legislation, importantly, would address what is, from our perspective, a really significant problem, which is that there currently is no comprehensive way that school-based arrest or SRO placement information can be readily accessed by the public, which in turn makes community oversight of SRO programs really complex. But we do know from the federal data that we do have and from anecdotal evidence that SRO programs, like many other disciplinary protocols, have a disproportionately harmful impact on students of color, students with disabilities, and LGBTQ students, and we think it's really critical that there be more transparency in these programs. Our organization, for example, in just the last year alone, has filed 2 lawsuits on behalf of 2 students in these disparately impacted demographics who face violent and explicitly unlawful treatment at the hands of their SROs. So what this legislation would appropriately do is just ensure that there's public-facing information that shows the true harm that SROs can inflict on students and on the campus environment. And it would also just show the tangible effects of these SRO programs. So we would just encourage one minor amendment, which we summarize in our written testimony, the gist of which is just a clarification of the need for all SRO-related data to be displayed. But otherwise, we urge passage of this legislation. We're strongly in support. Thank you for your time. I'd be happy to take any questions.
Thank you. Hannah, please stay on, Hannah. Are there any questions?
Yep.
Yes.
Her amendment. Hannah, can you explain your amendment a little bit better? You said all information regarding SROs, so can you be a little bit more specific, please?
Yeah, absolutely. It's detailed in our written testimony. I just was trying to be brief for time, so I apologize. So basically what we would encourage is there have been instances when it comes to student data where when it gets down to especially districts with lower number of those students, where if the number of data points is low enough, that data is suppressed to protect student privacy. We think, of course, that's a really, really important goal, but we also think that data is really important, so we would just encourage there to be a way to kind of ensure that there's a balance in those districts where there might be lower numbers of data points to both present the realities of school-based arrest in those districts and SRO placement at the same time as protecting student privacy. So we'd be happy to help with any language. We didn't include any specifically in our testimony, but it was just something that we wanted to ensure was thought of should this legislation move forward.
Thank you, Hannah. Thank you, Chairman.
And written testimony?
We do, and everybody is in favor of this bill, Chairman. And first one is Kids Count. So next one is Jordan Goyette. Next one is ACLU, and with Hannah, and she had that amendment. Next one is Cheyenne Gregory, Andrea Gonzalez Sanchez, and a organization called Nellie Mae Educational Foundation. Nicholas Donahue is in favor also.
Wow, Nick Donahue, yeah, that's big.
Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. That concludes the hearing on 5827. And Hannah, if you could please stay on.
Yeah, absolutely.
The next bill that we're going to hear is House Bill 5824. 34, yeah. Yep, 34, thanks. Which would direct school districts to prepare COVID recovery plans, which would include strategies and targets for students to address the obvious losses that have taken place, and focused on the needs and assessment of students. And if we look at what's happened with COVID, we know that there's been decreases in math performance, but also activities that, students have nationally have increases in depressive symptoms, anxiety. Also during the pandemic, unfortunately, food scarcity and family needs have increased. So I think this is an opportunity for local school departments to start drafting relief and recovery programs that address some of these losses, and also the social emotional needs of students. I have the two teenagers across the street who've been in their bedrooms most of in the school year started. I'll never forget, their mom took them outside of the school, first day of school, took their first day of school picture and said, okay, now go back to your rooms and work. It's just been very, very difficult. And I've talked to the kids about, even this summer, if you could get involved in an activity, a play, theater, the students need these types of emotional support activities and social activities. And I think that school systems should plan now. I think we have $6.2 million in the budget for schools for COVID recovery, local LEAs, and that they should start planning now, because as we know, families and parents plan their summers and teachers plan their summers. And now is the time to get plans done for these activities that will help our students and the losses that they've suffered. So that's the objective, but it's to be proactive now and make the plans and get something out there. Are there any questions for me regarding this? And
Just a comment, Mr.
Yes.
Chairman. I mean, this is in my estimation, this is a very important one, because there is a lot of students, especially, with me substituting at a middle school, the kids are lost when they don't have like band or sports or anything else. So they are really, losing a lot with this COVID situation here.
Yeah.
So thank you for putting this in, and I look forward to finding out what the information comes out of it.
And we do have one witness, Hannah Stern, ACLU. Hannah.
Hi again. Thank you, Chairman and members of the committee, for your time this evening again. My name is Hannah Stern, testifying on behalf of the ACLU of Rhode Island. We don't have a formal position on this legislation, but we do think this is a very commendable and conscientious goal. We would just like to encourage a small amendment, which would just ensure that both the draft and final plans created under this act would be public record. We just think it's important that community members and families have the opportunity to review the draft plans submitted in accordance, as well as the final plan. So just making sure that they aren't kept in dark throughout the process. But other than that, that's all my commentary. Thank you for your time. I'd be happy to take any questions.
Bill, got it? Okay, we've got that. Any questions on this bill? Thank you very much. That concludes the hearing on 5834. So, the last bill on tonight's schedule is 5073, and that is an act relating to financial literacy in schools. And with that, there is a huge need for financial literacy in Rhode Island. We have, I believe, 15% of our homes are what they call unbanked. That means families that don't have banks, that are struggling Today, student loans and unfortunately the mortgage foreclosures are up very high due to the pandemic, but there is a need for old-fashioned how to balance a checkbook, savings, and even, basic entrepreneurial skills that you need, looking at a business, fixed and variable costs. And Representative Alzate is here. Tolman High School in Pawtucket, when it was built almost 100 years ago, was an architectural marvel, but one of the programs they had in the school was a student-run bank. And I don't know if Representative Alzate, if you've ever seen that, it's at the other end of the stage from the auditorium. On the third floor, they had the tellers, the students had savings accounts, they made loans. And that back then, there were no computers, there were the old adding machines, they learned how to balance their ledgers. These were skills that students had, they realized it was very important. And I think today, we have to really focus on this across the curriculum and make sure that students have basic financial literacy needs. Any questions?
Chairman.
Yes, Representative Alzate.
So I just learned that Pawtucket out of Tolman and Shea, Tolman actually has a really good financial literacy management kind of program. They still have that, which I think is really great. And when you told me the story about the bank, I remember I went back into the auditorium. I'm like, now it makes sense why there's these windows here and why it's set up the way that it's set up. So
yeah,
it's cool thing to know.
Yeah, very, very good. That concludes the hearing on 5073. We have written testimony?
We do have written testimony, Chairman. 3 written testimonies, all in favor of it. Andy Andrade from RIDE is in favor of it. Cooperative Credit Union Association is in favor of it. And James Parisi from the Rhode Island Federation of Teachers and Health Professionals is also in favor of it.
Great.
And just my own little thing, I think that it should be mandatory that students take at least a basic financial literacy one. Like you said, for how to balance a checking account and things like that, how to set goals, et cetera, et cetera. So thank you for putting this in.
On my district right in Warwick Avenue, directly across from Pawtucket Credit Union, a beautiful new building, there is a payday loan spot right down the street. Within a quarter mile, there's another payday loan. And you see people that get caught up in this, and it just breaks your heart. And, they're my constituents.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Can I just add a piece on this?
Yes, Representative Bia.
Yes, for me right now, because it is an elective course in Providence.
Yes.
So what I did in my building was like moving forward. So I made a mandatory requirement it's a graduation requirement. So every student before you graduate from my building, you have to take that course either junior or senior year, if you choose to. But you have to do that before, which is good. I think it's good. Every high school student in the state should be able to take at least that course before they graduate.
And do the students seem to enjoy it and get something out of the course?
Yes, definitely. There's one course that once students are in those classes, one class basically you have no teachers calling. There's no behavior problem. There's nothing. They're into that because they're learning something that they like. They're learning something that they're going to apply.
Right.
That's something like they're already applying, because most of the high school students work. So something like they're actually applying is an application that they can actually see in real time.
Well, very good. Thank you, Representative Beer. You're such a resource for this committee. And that's
Chairman, if I could interject just quickly.
Representative Amore, absolutely.
Thank you. Just to piggyback on Representative Bia's statement, we have a popular elective here, very popular, personal finance at East Providence High School, and we embed personal finance in all our economics courses as well. But the point is that it's popular as an elective. Many of our students take it. And just to your earlier point, Chairman, in the new East Providence High School, just south of the Amore wing, is a student-run bank in association with one of our local banks here. So what is old is new.
Wow, that's great. That's great. You know, especially Representative Amore, to get the kids involved earlier with banking and the whole process so they're not taken advantage of with these payday loan outfits. Are there any further questions or comments relating to 5073? That concludes, yes, Representative Norrie.
Chairman Amore, is it going to be called the Amore Bank and Trust?
No.
We could only hope. Well, thank you very much. That concludes the hearing on 5073. And with that, I'd like to just thank Representative Amore of East Providence, Representative Alzate, gave us that colorful background from her alma mater, Tolman High School, Principal, Representative Baya, thank you very much. Justine Caldwell is in Judiciary now. Representative Donovan, hanging in from the town of Bristol, thank you very much. Representative Fenton Fung is in another committee. Representative Giraldo of Central Falls, thank you, Representative. Representative Kislak of the fashionable East Side. Representative Norrie of West Warwick and Coventry. Very good. And Representative Phillips, who represents Woonsocket and a little bit of Cumberland. And Representative Sherry Roberts was virtually here all the way from Coventry and West Greenwich. So thank you very much. Motion to adjourn. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Have a nice evening. That concludes the hearing.